Sandy and Polly, we got about 5 minutes to start, but just a quick sound check.
I can hear Sandy.
Okay, thanks, Sandy.
I can hear you.
Perfect. Yep. And up.
You what? That was
That is the live stream. So that's off now. So I wasn't saying the exact same thing again. We're good to go. And just so everybody in this room knows, it's off mute.
Oh, I think they finally can remember, Sean.
Yeah. You're welcome. It's just in case. I don't know if you'll need this really. You might. Yeah. And I honestly, I haven't had it. No. It's not fun.
started then. Welcome everyone to tonight's board meeting, and we'll begin with Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Okay, for introduction of visitors.
So I can introduce.
Thank you.
So first we have Tom Looper from Fresno Gage. I can tell I've been in the business for a while because he really, it's not, probably not a good descriptive term, but I've seen him go from Padawan to Jedi, you know, although he was never really a Padawan. But we're excited to have him for the annual audit and excited that I'm in that profession. So he does good work, and he'll share with us during the action item portion. We also have Patrick Gallagher, who's our 712 science teacher, teaches math as well. Excited to have him. Mason Dove and Owen Tiggs are here to help share about the Yellowstone trip. And Jamie Facey and Dennis Cocklemeyer is also here as a Gear Up coordinator to kind of share a little bit about our trip. So lots of guests, good things.
A lot of good guests.
Yep.
Mason, how old are you right now? Good. I was looking at a list today and trying to remember how old you were. For 4-H coming up there. Well, welcome everyone. Online we have. Did you say?
Just right now is just Polly and Sandy,
Polly
and
and
then we're
Sandy.
live streaming on YouTube as
Okay,
well.
is Quinn coming or do we know?
I've talked to him a couple of times today and he was planning on coming.
Okay.
Must be running a
All right.
little late.
All right, so public comment. Do we have anybody signed up for public comment?
There's no public comment.
Well, okay. I've been watching some other board meetings online occasionally, and I could do without some of that public comment. With some boards, yes. So we've been happy with the public comment we have had. Don't let me discourage a bit of that because it's important. Public warfare, you know, I'm glad we don't have that. Let me rephrase that. So we're gonna hear about the Gear Up the Yellowstone trip.
So you guys
We're
are
ready.
up and I got it loaded up.
So Mason and Owen are here to take you guys through our trip and share a few of the pictures and where we went, what we did in Yellowstone. We were taking 21 out of the 23 students with us, and we had great chaperones. Other two are here, Mr. Teagues, Mr. Cockmeyer, and Mrs. Kronz went with us. You guys are standing in their way. So I'm going to turn it over to the students, and then I'll come in at the
One of you
end.
boys can stay there and one can go touch the screen. Help move it along. There you go. Perfect.
How does it?
Oh, maybe that's the, hold on.
Might just have to use your clicker. There, just use the clicker.
So the first stop that we made on our trip to Yellowstone was at Lolo Pass. This was a visitor center that gave us a bunch of information about Lewis and Clark's journey over the Bitterroot Mountains in 1877. We got to go on a hike around there, eat lunch, super cool place, a bunch of good information. A big map in the center deal that was completely carved out of wood. I said a whole bunch of good information. It was good to look at. So the next stop we made before we got to Yellowstone was to the Lewis and Clark Caverns. Lewis and Clark Caverns State Park is Montana's first and best known state park, featuring one of the most decorated limestone caverns in the Northwest. Naturally air conditioned, these spectacular caves lined with stalactites, stalagmites, columns, helictites are electrically lighted and safe to visit. And that pool right there. So if you did get to see that picture in the back there, it was this little freshwater pool that had kind of accumulated over the years. And the guy that first kind of started the tours around there, Dan Morrison, used to use it kind of as a wishing well, throw pennies in there. And slowly over time, as those pennies became kind of oxidized, gave that pool that green color. And they fished all the pennies out of there, and it's still that color to this day. So this is us waiting to go in the cave. She had to go, the lady giving us the tour had to go and make sure the bats were in the correct spot so we didn't disturb them when we went in. Then, so here's Mr. Kalkemeyer going down the 500 stairs that led to the bottom. There are 500 down, 300 up. You had to definitely watch your step there to be slippery. And then the railing there, they had to have each one customly made for our safety, like all different heights, angles, just so to be able to get down the cavern. And here's some pictures of us inside. They called this stuff on the walls cave popcorn, stalactites, all kinds of cool stuff. And this, they had this little like 7-foot slide. You had to slide down going down there, no stairs there. Cool. Then here's our freshwater pool again with that greenish kind of tent. So here's one of the features we got to see in this cavern. This is what they call a column. They take tens of thousands of years to form. And this one they say would have fallen 1,000, 1,500 years ago of natural causes. It's cool. It's way bigger than you'd think in this picture. It's really cool. There's some other columns around in there too. So some of the bats we got to see in the Lewis and Clark Caverns. So the bats that have all been in the Lewis and Clark Caverns are the fringe bat, little brown bat, long-eared bat, western small-footed bat, Townsend's big-eared bat, and the big brown bat. Fringe bat, long-eared bat. I don't know if we got a picture of we got to see a few little groups of them on the ceiling. So white nose syndrome, this is a disease that can affect bats. So the white nose syndrome, otherwise known as WNS, is a disease that is hurting bats while they hibernate. This kills several bats and has made several bat species in danger of extinction, including the little brown bat. So ways that they've kind of formed to control white nose syndrome is they regulate kind of what clothes that you've worn. If you've been, for what they said, if 5 to 10 years in these caves, you had to make sure you're wearing different clothes than the ones before because they can carry diseases that can stay in your clothes up to 5 years. So some facts about the park bats. Many of the bat species in the park look very similar to mice due to their small ears. Then the bats that hibernate live much longer than bats who are migrating. Bats that use the caves are the hibernators. Bats use echolocation to find their prey. Different types use quiet echolocation to sneak up on their prey. So now we finally made it to Yellowstone, and I'll pass it off to Ellen.
So we saw a lot of wildlife in Yellowstone. This one is about bison. We saw a ton of bison. The bison population dropped really low a while ago, but it's starting to grow back really strong. And it is 2,300 to 5,500 in two subpopulations to find where they go for breeding. Then we saw mountain goats too. They were population about 208 in Yellowstone. We had to use spotting scopes, and our guides took us to these spots where we could find these mountain goats. And it was really cool to see them. We had to use our phone cameras through the spotting scopes to find the mountain goats in the mountains. Wolves in Yellowstone, there's estimated to have 94 wolves in 8 packs. It's part of their reintroduction into Yellowstone program. And we didn't see any in Yellowstone, but our guides showed us a video of a couple wolves and a bear or grizzlies. There's about 5,800 elk in Yellowstone. This was one of the elk we saw on our way home. It was a huge elk. And it was the biggest one we saw the entire trip. So it was really cool to see that on the last day of Yellowstone. And in places like Mammoth, elk would just be wandering around freely. They weren't afraid of you really. The grizzly bear population just maybe around 728. We saw this bear with our guides. Mr. Gallagher spotted it out. I think that was one. And this was the 2 wolves and the 2 grizzlies that the guide showed us the day before. So we missed it just by a day.
Yeah, kind of trying to fight over a carcass.
Oh
they
yeah,
found.
there was a carcass that they had. And and then this was our total route through the entire trip. We stayed a little bit higher than that in Gardner, Montana. And we did multiple routes throughout the days, went all the way down to Lake Yellowstone and did that loop. With the guides, we went Lamar Valley. That's where we saw a lot of that wildlife. And Old Faithful we traveled to too. Oh yeah, that was just our route. And then this was Grand Prismatic, which was really fun to see all the colors and the sulfur in that pool. It was also really smelly though, so it was cool to see though. And then Old Faithful was also really cool to watch. We got there just minutes before it erupted first time, and it was really fun to watch that. There's a photo of that. And then we walked around for a little bit and got to see it go again. And it's really high. There's a picture of our chaperones at one of the pools. And then there's a bit
Bighorn sheep,
yeah, bighorn sheep. That's it. Bighorn sheep. This one, it was right next to the road as we were driving by, maybe like 10-15 feet away. So it was really close, and then it wandered off. This was the closest we ever got to one. And then you got the lake.
All right, so this is Trout Lake that we got to go visit. We got to go do a little hike. There's a trail that goes all around there. And some problems that they're having in this lake are invasive species of fish, like the cutthroat and the lake trout. And they've been spending quite a bit of money trying to remove these invasive species to try and raise, was it the lake trout or the cutthroat
They want to
population?
keep the native cutthroat, but that wasn't in this lake. That was just cutthroat and rainbows in that.
Cutthroat and
Remember,
rainbows,
there's a fish hatchery there.
Yeah. And like right here, there's a little waterfall that kind of goes down. Then this is the Grand Canyon of Yellowstone. Got to take a long hike around here. So that's a little bit tough for some people because it's pretty good ways down there. The waterfalls were super, super big, super cool to look at. The river is running. There's a picture that we got. Then here is at Morrison or Norse.
That's still at Grand Prismatic, or no, not Grand Prismatic. What was the next stop down the road, Sean? But anyhow,
I thought anyway, this,
the other
yeah,
top
one of
areas.
either Norris or somewhere. Then this was at Norris right here. You can see we got one of kind of the sulfur vents. I'm pretty sure this wasn't quite a pool. And then kind of a little river, all kinds, like I said, all the colors and stuff were definitely cool to see. Then, so the Continental Divide. A continental divide is an area of raised terrain that separates a continent's river systems that are fed to different basins. So down here, some of the rivers that flow from here go out to the Pacific. These are the only ones that flow out there. Then everything else, all these rivers flow down into the Missouri, then out into the Gulf of Mexico. So we got to see a bunch of rivers. It's kind of like the Yellowstone River. It's the longest free-flowing river in the lower 48. It's about 700 miles long and flows through multiple states. It connects with the Missouri and North Dakota. Gardner River, formed below Cache Lake near the Electric Peak. It's about 25 miles long and located in the northwestern corner of Yellowstone. The Gibbon River, as well as 25 miles long. It's fed from the Madison Lake in Yellowstone. This one flows east of the Continental Divide. The Lamar River, 40 miles long. It sits at an elevation of 6,400 feet. This was located in the northwestern part of Wyoming. The Firehole River, 21 miles long, flows north from its source, which is the Madison Lake on the Continental Divide. And then Craters of the Moon. This is what they call a cinder cone, one of the formations from the volcanic eruption a long time ago. We got to hike to the top of that. Super cool. It's a lot farther up there than you'd think. And here's a picture of Mr. Teagues Faith took. one of the, I don't even know what they call those, but go around, got on both parts.
We tried to be
panorama.
tricky and get in the picture twice.
And the winds up there, the winds were strong up there too. Let's see here. So primary succession is where new areas of plant life forming for the first time in the area. So this is after the eruption where seeds and everything are just finally starting to grow, break down that rock into richer, better things for larger trees to grow in. We noticed this primary succession at the craters of the moon in certain spots. 1,000 years plant life, it's kind of a recent thing starting to happen. 'Cause there's not a whole lot of trees or anything around. In the Indian cave, this was a cool small cave system that we got to go explore. It went back this way, then there's a cave back kind of this direction that went back a good ways. We got to go hike back there. Super cool to hike around in. Then this, I don't know if you want to take it over
Yeah.
from here, Gallagher.
So our total trip, this says 1,100 miles on our loop, but then we had multiple days driving in the park. And if you've ever been to the park, you know how you spend a long time driving those loops. What did we calculate? He was lucky enough to sit with me for
30,
over,
33
he's got 33, 35 hours with me in the van. So that was enough for him for the year.
I calculated my watch, I had 45 miles of hiking over that.
Yeah, that's somebody else threw that in, how many miles we actually walked around.
107 days.
But the whole premise of taking this was education. And so the educational growth with these students, we have our wolves talked a lot here, and then the wolves talked a lot in the park. And the dynamic is totally different in that. And the riparian areas that are recovered there, the species, the beaver, the muskrats, all the birds, the benefit of that, seeing the two sides and the dynamic is, I think, very powerful for their learning. We watched the elk and bison populations on our tour date. I was talking to the guide and I was like, hey, I remember being back here in the early 90s and elk were all over Old Faithful and just elk were everywhere. And now you don't see the elk as much. And I'm like, is that all the wolf population, wolves hitting that? And he's like, yeah. And so it was dramatic going from 20,000+ elk in the park to now we're in the 6,000. And so looking at that difference in that timeline from 1995 to now, it's pretty dynamic. And it's good for these guys to learn what the predator-prey balance is and what it does. Geothermal features, I mean, we went to the Mecca on Earth for that. So that was fantastic for the kids to see the cone fountain geysers, all the hot pools. Thermophiles, we talk about CRISPR, PCR and all that. They use the thermophiles in that process. So medically, the relationship is there. And then the other geology features, the continental divides, we kept on talking about on radios back and forth and arguing which river's going where and everything else. And finally, I just was like, I don't know anymore. I was confused and got the map when we got home. So the hydrology goes with that. And then the lava fissures. We're there at Craters of the Moon, seeing that 2,100-year-old area and the primary and secondary succession. You can't beat that. You have a textbook and you have the diagrams that show you, but when you're actually out there walking and you see the little bit of plants growing here, and then you look on the horizon and the kids get to see the trees and the green life. I don't know, that's high quality learning. So it was a great trip and I appreciate you guys allowing us to go.
Thank you very much.
Did you have anything else to add from your experience?
Yeah, this was a very interesting trip because, it's been a while since I've been on a field trip and I'm never on a 7-day out in the field trip. So I was thinking before we went on this, 5 days is going to be a pretty long time and kept stuffing things. And, oh, we got to see this, we got to see that. We got to go Craters to the Moon too. And it was like, that's pretty full agenda. Well, when you're out there and you're starting at 7:30 in the morning, you're coming back in at 5:30, 6:30 at night, you get a little break at dinner, and then you have class. You have another hour worth of recapping what happened that day or writing on things. And it was was a full experience, not just the science part, the writing pieces that were supported and the discussions and, you know, from day one, it was talk of the projects that are going to be built from this, and the discussions are going to follow up. So it was kind of setting the stage for future learning. I think it did a perfect job on that. And kind of on the other side of this, why I'm here is the Gear Up piece. If you recall, about 4 years ago, we applied for a Gear Up grant, and it's federal grant that funds through the states. And so we kind of hit one little magic bubble when we were probably qualified to receive this grant. Anytime between then and since then, we wouldn't have been qualified for it. But it follows two groups of kids from 7th grade up through graduation. And so now we're in our 4th year, and these are freshmen and sophomore. And it's been it has some benefits in terms of it identifies like 12 different key components. This was mainly STEM activities, and it was a little bit of career awareness and a little bit of college awareness, because we go through Missoula. Okay, this is the University of Montana. We have an alumni here. And we go to Butte, we talked about Montana Tech. We go through Southern Idaho. Here's Idaho State University. Here's College of Southern Idaho. And here's ARCO with the first nuclear powered city. I mean, it was just, there were a lot of things that were going on. And so, when we have a small, what I call a small budget for Gear Up, because I think our annual budget is about 16,000, Marcy, maybe 15 or 16,000. Well, each year they've had mini grant availability. And so this year, the mini grant was targeted to be about 10 grand. So what we've done is we've been able to get other STEM supporting things normally in the last 3 or 4 years of around 8 or 10,000. This year, grant was 10,000. We talked about the idea, and then we went back and talked to the state director. Well, hey, we have a really good idea. Do you have any extra money? And they 15,000. And so we're very thankful for the state to kind of give us a bigger opportunity than they gave everybody else. And so that's one of the real pluses. We basically get about twice the benefit out of this through the mini grants. And when you take a field activity like this, I mean, you're talking about jobs, you're talking about what science actually is out doing and performing and observing. And I think the kids were really good. I know younger superintendents get a little worried about some of this stuff, but the kids are really good, and they make you proud.
Thank you.
And I'll just wrap up. I want to give special kudos and commendations to Patrick for putting it together. It really was just an idea that we talked about when the grant came up, and it's like, we got Chromebooks and we got iPads. What's something really special that we can do with kids? And he kind of took charge. He made all the hotel arrangements. He figured out meals for these kids. Really a once in a lifetime experience. Great to see these 2 boys presenting. And we could have had everybody here to present. We just thought these 2 would do a good job, and they did. But just an amazing experience. I think for a lot of these kids, it was amazing the amount of hands when you said, how many of you have been to Montana before? Less than half. How many have been to Yellowstone? Maybe a quarter, maybe less. So it really is a neat experience for these kids, and to hear kids just having conversations about primary succession, or can you guys tell me the difference between a spruce and a pine tree? Or I only said it like 15 times, but just a really fun experience. And then also Mrs. Krantz isn't here, but just want to emphasize her help. She actually made breakfast for every morning. They were like, one was like a grab and go, and they had like French toast, one breakfast, and just a really well thought out. And then also she led some of the activities with the journaling and the other things that we did in the evenings. So and we pulled it off. It was great. Awesome.
Great team. Everyone filled their role. And I mean, Mr. Kockelmeyer, just the silent helper everywhere. It was just done, and it happened.
Pizza the last night. As teachers, we were all just talking, and all of a sudden everything's cleaned up and put away, and kids are tucked in bed, and it's all done. So
thank you. I don't know. Being a teacher, I never dreamed of being able to do this. And I ran into one of my colleagues from Grangeville when we were at Lolo Pass, and she goes, "What are you doing?" And she's like, "We're headed to Yellowstone." And she goes, "What a blessing to be at a small school," And so it's awesome. I think these guys 10, 15 years down the road, it'll still resonate with them and hopefully it gets them back and out in our beautiful world that we live in. So.
You guys had a good time?
I was in
Yeah.
I was in a meeting on Saturday or Friday with the executive board of ISTA. So we're going around giving our region reports, and I started out my regional report by saying, listing the schools that were closed due to COVID, and then the classrooms that were closed due to COVID. Then I ended it up with, but was it 9th and 10th? Our 9th and 10th, they're on a field trip to Yellowstone Park. There was Yellowstone Park. Yeah, that's right.
You know,
Anyway, pretty good.
it was the best quarantining we could have
Yeah.
done
Yeah.
because where we stayed, we were outside of town. We weren't around anyone else other than ourselves. I mean, it worked out well.
Any questions or?
I don't have questions. I think kudos. That was wonderful. I know, what, 3 of us board members have kids that got to go on that and the first one represented. So, yeah, just amazing that you guys were able to do that. And kids had a great time. A lot of learning that you can't just sit in the classroom and get, that's for sure.
Polly or Sandy, do you have anything?
Oh, good job, guys.
Good presentation, kids. Good job with that, too.
I just had one thing about the presentation. I thought we should have had a picture of Mr. Cocklemeyer after he climbed up 300 steps rather than on his way down. 500.
That was the first day. About the 5th day, yeah, going flat was still a challenge.
Well, good job. Those photographs are very nice. By the way, were those cell phone photographs or?
Yes.
There was a few that they just found.
But-
The majority of those photos. were
Those
their
Yeah.
are,
photos.
they were good.
A lot of those pictures we're looking through binoculars and they're holding the phone up with
Oh.
binoculars. Snap, snap, snap. Nick Whitten
He's
taught us a
good.
lot about how to get wildlife photography.
Interesting.
It was amazing the kids' skills at that and who was good at what. Because we'd roll up to some spots and some of the kids would be like, yeah, here, come look through my spotting scope and just the different skills that it was fun. It was fun to see. And the energy when the kids get out.
Or no, we should probably stay on the pack.
You know who plays in the woods a bunch, you know? So,
Thank you. Thank
you
you.
bet. Thanks, guys.
Appreciate your time. Okay, consent agenda, you got the minutes in your packet. I've got a copy here as well. Just your financial reports are in your packet. Also have a copy, September bills, associated student financial reports. So any questions, changes in the minutes or suggestions or questions on the reports? If we don't have any, I entertain a motion for approve the consent agenda.
I guess my one question on that would be, Knife River did get that, because that's coming off last.
It is not
It is not addressed.
addressed yet. Their estimate was it would be done the end of August and it's not.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda.
Thank you, Glenn. We have a second,
I'll second it.
moved and seconded. For the approving consent agenda, any discussion, the motion? Hearing none, we'll vote all. Let's see, how we gonna do this? I can't forget how we did. Is there anybody opposed to the motion? Anybody abstained from the motion? Then it's approved unanimously. Thank you. I have to do that because like anybody online could say, hey, I'm for the motion. You know, we can't tell who's saying it, so. So that's that, and now we're ready for the district audit. Tom is here, Tom Luker from Fresnel Gage, and welcome.
Yeah, I think Marcy you have electronically a bunch of the packets. I do have copies of the agenda, so that since you only have one screen there, you can look at the agenda and then also the, you got one? One, do you want the next one back to? Sure. Right to look at one?
If you have an extra.
I got some extras. All right, I got my own. Okay, so I guess in short, this is gonna look, I mean, I'm an accountant, so I don't like change, but so this will be very similar to prior years. There's a couple tweaks in here that I'll make sure I point out. I guess overall, the audit went very well. This is only my second 630 audit presented, and I don't think I had any actual adjustments. So we post some stuff for just ease and, you know, financial statement presentation. But that right there is just a testament to how well of a job Marcy does, along with all the other staff. So if you take away nothing else from that clean report, and staff does a really good job. And then we'll kind of get into the nitty gritty here. So the independent audit should confirm to the board that what you've seen throughout the year about the district financials is accurate. That again is the case for 2021. If I was coming in here and telling you I made all these adjustments and materially changed what you saw throughout the year, then maybe some of the decisions that you made throughout the year, you maybe would have made different ones. So just rest assured that what Marcy is providing you, I'm not really changing. It evaluates the quality of the district's accounting records. And then we also confirms that the district is complying with certain laws and regulations regarding finances. As always, you can contact me at any point throughout the year if you have questions. I'd rather deal with them as they're happening than come back after the fact, after the year's over. So I'm always available for questions or bouncing ideas off of or whatnot. Kind of a layout of the first few pages of the booklet. The management discussion analysis, pages 6 to 12. And then you've got the basic financial statements, the overall entirety of the district. This is the business basis of accounting, as if you were a company, you know, down the street. Those are on pages 14 through 15. They have all the debt and capital assets and everything, whereas the other statements don't have some of those long-term assets on more of a cash basis. This would be more of a full accrual basis. So full accrual basis 14 through 15, all the related notes, many pages worth between 25 and 43. The thing that you need to look at on our report is there's basically, this year there's two things. Normally there's just one. So this is kind of one of the areas that's added. We are qualifying the opinion due to the implicit rate subsidy of the retirement healthcare. And we've talked about this, we've been doing this for many years. Basically, it's the district is charged a flat rate, but if someone who was older or depending on their age would be charged a different rate, that difference between their actual rate, if they would go out and get it themselves versus what the district has, is the implicit rate subsidy that is not cost effective to hire an actuary to go out and do that. But since it's accounting standards, we have to qualify the opinion on just those 2 pages of business basis reports. The other thing that is new this year is the implementation of GASB 84 fiduciary activities standards. Essentially how that affected the district is student activity funds was agency fund. You only showed the balance sheet accounts. You didn't show anything on the income statement. It was all student funds kind of in and out there, all balance sheet. What that standard did is it made it a governmental fund. So it's now added in with all the other funds. And we show, you know, the assets of the fund and then revenue and expenses, just like any other fund. And that affected both types of financial statements. I think there was $102,000 change in equity that we posted for that. The 2 major adjustments that we post to the financial statements that only affect those 2 pages of the business basis accounting are the adjustments for Percy retirement and then the sick leave plan. It's always kind of interesting to me how the Percy liability changes from year to year. And it's really dictated upon the investment returns that Percy can get. This is measured as of 6/30/2020. So if you remember back that long ago, it seems more than just a year ago. COVID was still happening and market returns were kind of starting to uptick a little bit, but they weren't recovering fully yet. So that impacted the liability for the district. It went from $418,000 at the beginning of the year to $850 at the end of the year. So more than doubled it just by having poor investment returns. You're still contributing the same amount of the same percentage. It's really dependent on the investment returns. A 1%, they shoot for 7.05%. If they miss that by 1% either way, it can take that $850,000 liability to 1.7, or if they get better, like 8%, then it could go to 111,000 liability. Idaho is doing a really good job. As of June 30, 2020, it was 88.22% funded. Average funding of all states is 73% as of 2019. And just 8 states were over 90% funded in 2019. So Idaho does a really good job with their retirement obligation. And then note 5 there at the bottom, the investment return, you can see this of 6/30/21 was 27.9%. The graph that they have for the fiscal year that person puts out, it just spikes. I mean, it went from 3.1% of 6/30/2020 to 27.9. So that liability, I'm expecting to make up for some loss, last year, but that's a return there that they were able to pull out. The other adjustment that we propose, business basis financial statements, is for the sick leave for OPEB. OPEB stands for other post-employment benefits. That actually is overfunded, and it started out an asset of 84,000 and ended the year at an asset of 102,000. It is 152% overfunded. And then also to help with that overfunding, they actually stopped contributions for 18 months that started 1/1/20. So they're, I think, going again for this current fiscal year. But I mean, they're still, I don't know where they'll be at as of 6/30/21, but my guess is they'll probably be close to still be overfunded. So those are 2 major adjustments that we post. They really don't affect the district. You're not going to have to pay for that liability. They may change your rates, but as long as they keep managing it the way they are, you'll have plenty of lead time to know about rate changes.
Which rate are you referring to?
The contribution rate. So the employer does 11.94 and the employee does 60% of that. The other financial statements that we have are the cash basis or the fund statements. Those are on pages 16 through 24. Those are going to more closely match what you see on a monthly basis. It's more of a cash basis reporting. That report is a clean opinion. We're not qualifying anything on that one. So essentially we have 2 separate opinions on our report. This is the one that's clean. The second report that's towards the back of the book on pages 50 to 52 is a compliance report. Whether the district complies and regulations. We did note one item, which you note every year, is that there's limited personnel here at the district, so segregation of duties isn't perfect. So we make sure we note that. And the other item is that we make this booklet and compile this. Some supplemental information. If you're wanting more of a blurb about what each fund is, on pages 57 through 62 is some detailed information by fund. That's kind of handy to read if you want to know what is the purpose of this fund, or a quick refresher on there. Oh, that's on pages 53 to 56. And then 57 through 62 was the detailed fund information by fund, which is actually probably the easiest part of the financial statements to look at. If you want to look at the balance sheet and income statement by fund, those are the 57 through 62 is where you want to go. It's kind of some financial highlights that we'll hit. The general fund, and if you're on page 62 of the financial statements, you can see these numbers. Page 60 is going to be essentially the income statement of each individual fund. You can see there the chart kind of shows the net income of the general fund over the last handful of years. General fund ended at $45,000 net income. You can see how kind of that ebbs and flows over the past few years. On page 3 of the agenda, there's 3 charts here that kind of list over the carryover balances. So about $500,000 in fund balance in the general fund. We always recommend about 60 days of cash flow. That's essentially 2 months. Right now, you're at 2.7. You've been kind of maintaining that. The middle graph there is fund balance carryover by month. It's important to have that carryover. A lot of your funding is reimbursement basis, or you only get it at certain times of the year, like the November 15th payment, May 15th. There's these certain dates that you get state, but then a lot of the grants are you have to expend the money and then request the money. So that requires a certain amount of capital to be able to do that. The last item 4 down there is state funds. And you kind of see how that's grown over the last handful of years, down just a little bit this year. And then on page 4 of the agenda, the ADA, I think some of that's, I think it jumped up a little bit this year, how with COVID and how attendance is being taken. But that's kind of a graph of how the ADA has been handled. Item B, there's a forest reserve carryover of 207,000. The board has pretty good discretion on what to use that fund for. It was originally given out for buildings and improvements. But if the board decides that that's not necessary, they could use it for pretty much anything else. One item that I look at when I first get the financial statements is on pages 61 through 62. And you'll notice at the very bottom, there's a whole bunch of zeros. What those zeros tell me is that those grants are being operated within their means. There's not a bunch of money left over in them that's being carried over. You're getting a grant, you're expending the money from that grant. That's kind of a quick reference to see if the grants are being managed properly. School lunch. That's actually been some good news the last couple of years. You can see that there on page 62, right next to the Gear Up fund that they were talking about earlier. That actually has a net income of just under $5,600. Last year was a net income of 62 or 6,500, and then I think all the years for quite a while before that were losses that were supplemented by the general fund. So with the USDA keeping the seamless option, the SSO program, that students pay for their meals, the federal government's funding the school lunch sufficiently, and you're operating it efficiently enough that you're actually getting some net profit in there that at some point will either help losses in future or give you some budget to do something else with, some improvements or something. So that's kind of handy. I guess a real nice option that usually that fund that loses is actually made money the last couple of years. So bond redemption fund. It's got a balance of $333,000. Remaining debt on that is 154, so the taxes are levied to pay all that, so that's moving around along. School plant facility got carried over of 98,000 to work on buildings or other facility improvements. And then the self-insured medical benefit pool, that's actually back on pages 20 through 22, but essentially that's the district self-insuring themselves, and then some of the profit that went to the insurance company you're keeping by doing that self-insured, which seems to work really well for all the districts that I've bought them. Of the 3 that I do, all of them do it. So. That's kind of all I have. Again, the fund statements and towards the back, those are really handy to look at. How did each individual fund do? On page 14, it's kind of a confusing schedule, so I'll give you a cheat how to actually read it. Actually, page 15. So this is the income statement for the district-wide, with capital assets and everything. The easiest way to read it is from left to right. So if you want to pick like food services, since we were talking about that, and this, you're going to notice that the net income is different, but we got to remember this is on full accrual where the other one's cash basis. So if you look at the food services line, it had expenses of 91,000, some charges for service. With the students not paying, there was some random, I think right at the beginning of the year that there was some confusion, so some parents paid. But a lot of that is adult meals. And then the operating grants, so $87,000, most of that's from the federal government SSO program for a net of 145. The other thing that's added new to this sheet is the student activity funds. That's new. And then the very second line up from the very, very bottom is the change in accounting principle. And that's where we added the fund balance of the student activity funds in. So if you want to look at it by fund, go towards the back of the book. If you want to look at it kind of as a department, then page 15 is where I would look. Well, yeah, the function or default department or however you want to call it. And then there's a bunch of notes that are fun to read through every year if you so inclined to do that. Many pages to maybe help explain some things further. And then of course the descriptions of all the funds, page 50s. So it's kind of the highlights there. Of course, I'm open to any questions or anything you want me to go over a little bit more. But again, essentially clean report, even with the qualified opinion, that's not really an issue. That's really actually supported by the State Department of Education. They don't even really care about that actuary number, which would, my cousin who's the actuary of the family would be very disappointed. I would say that, but we kind of butt heads a little bit. So clean report, staff does a really good job. Most of my other school districts, even in the firm, we go to the October board meeting because they're a little bit later. So.
Okay, thank you very much. Do you have questions, anyone? I've been hearing the, lack of enough people. What do you?
Segregation
Of duties for 25 years. I've been on this board. Well, at the audit for the ISBA, we actually had that come up, but we could do something about it down there because they shifted some staff duties over the year, and then realized that they'd actually caused trouble with that.
Yeah.
And so we had to resegregate the staff duties to get that accomplished. Here, of course, we can't chop Marcy in half.
Yeah, it's not worth the additional cost of hiring another person.
Yeah.
And really it comes down to you guys as the board and overseeing, reviewing the list of expenditures, making sure there's not, a Marcy Stapleton utility bill sitting on there or something like that. I mean, that's where the risk is you guys can help mitigate some of that risk by doing a good review of the activities in the consent agenda So help mitigate
One
some of that
other
risk.
quick question, I think I know the answer, but I'm gonna ask it anyway because it's hanging out there kind of. So our parking lot
Yeah.
is a huge expense. Is it in this report? then?
It's in here under construction process.
No.
Did we not put that because it was still
Because it
in
was still in
yeah.
progress. So that big fund balance that you have, you need to
That's
subtract
the
the
forest fund.
150,000.
150,000 plus.
The general fund, the 505.
Okay, so
thousand.
it's coming out of the general.
Yes, subtract 150 off that.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't know if it would, because it was, it's still in
Yeah, it wasn't-
progress, but it's pretty much done, but we haven't. paid
It
the
wasn't
bill.
placed into service.
Okay.
Technically, since
Well, we better not let anybody park there.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of hard to keep people off there, but yeah, they're
Okay,
gonna need some.
well, that's
drainage work,
interesting.
I think.
Thank you. Anybody else have questions or comments? Okay, well, thank you very much for the presentation and your work on this. And thank you, Marcy and Sean, for your work on this as well, and everyone else and staff who helps us. And thank you, board, for monitoring Marcy and make sure she's going the straight and narrow.
Hard work.
Yeah, that's hard work. But seriously, we take it seriously and we appreciate it. Thank you.
So I guess the only thing we
We
need
need
from
a
the board is to authorize its distribution to all the many places it needs to go.
So we need a motion to approve the audit and, like you say, authorize distribution.
So moved.
Thank you. Carrie moved. Second,
I'll second.
we have a second. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none. Is anybody opposed to the motion? Anybody abstaining from the motion? Pass unanimously then. Thank you.
All right. I'll put it back.
Thanks, Tom.
Yeah.
Great work.
Thanks.
Okay, next up is the classified salary rates.
So it's down in the pack a little bit, Marcy. Yeah, page 23 in the packet.
Is it overtime?
Is that right?
That's the salary schedule. And then these are out.
So after some conversation as summer kind of continued, the board has actually already approved the salary, the hourly rates for the employees and the salary schedule earlier this summer. My conversation actually started as we were to fill an emergency kind of position where we had a staff member leave and needed to fill an aide position. And I was talking to some worked at Taco John's, and the fact that Taco John's was offering a higher salary than what we would for a paraprofessional or an aide. And so that got me thinking about a lot and having a conversation with Marcy. And so what we came up with Marcy's help, I guess, and kind of my pushing was an increase overall to the salary schedule kind of across the board. And we have added in two different bus driver, one for grandfathered bus drivers, which pays by the mile, and then a second one for new bus drivers, which will pay by the hour of service. Most districts pay, well, everyone except for us, as far as I know at this point, pays by an hour as opposed to the mile. So it would be a shift. Marcy and I looked at moving bus drivers, the current bus drivers, to the kind of the hourly pay, and it just didn't really pencil out. So in the decision to kind of leave it like that. So what I'm proposing is a shift in the pay to aides, secretary, cook, all of those positions. And remind me, Marcy, because I didn't look at it today, but is it basically two steps worth? So what it amounts to is a 2-step move for everybody down that. Approximately, I mean, because it's 3% per year on this scale, so it'd be, slightly more than 6% increase for staff members, and gets them in line a little bit more with what the current, I guess, inflationary pressure is demanding. I do think it's important to note, as board members are considering approving this for the 21-22 school year, that There are certainly other benefits that we offer. So it's not always fair to say, well, Taco John's pays more than Nez Perce School District, because Taco John's does not offer a full 100% paid health insurance plan. It's really a top-notch plan with a $500 deductible. Taco John's also doesn't offer to pay 60% of your spouse for dependents. I mean, all that stuff is an extra benefit and a very significant benefit, on the order of perhaps, we calculated that too, and I don't have it in front of me, about $10 an hour, or is that what we kind of penciled out?
For Percy.
Yeah, with Percy too, that's the other piece. Percy and health insurance might account for about $10 an hour. But it does get, some money. Oftentimes we have aides that aren't quite working full-time that have to pay a portion of their benefits, and sometimes their spouse's benefits. And there's, circumstances where their actual take-home check is not very much. They're getting a benefit, but they're all in all. So I think we're in a financial position to be able to offer this. I think it puts us more competitive to attract good people in these aide positions. That's the primary thing, but also the secretarial, cook, and other positions too. So I guess with the board's discussion and consent, I'd like to change that salary schedule. And then in addition, the second page there is just makes that adjustment to the actual staff members. Yep, thanks, Marcy. The other piece where I think we need to bring ourselves in line with more competitive is with certified teachers too. I don't know if you guys saw right at the end of last week, Governor Little came out with an idea to, with $10 million to help increase substitute teachers. We'll be talking about that as we talk about our COVID plan too. But this would be an increase of $10 a day for certified staff and for classified staff to get it up to $90 a day and $70 a day for classified staff. I think, I just saw Grangeville advertise that, they pay $120 a day. I shouldn't say that out loud over YouTube for people to hear. I think there's benefits to working here. And I know, like when we were searching for bus drivers, you could keep raising the price all you want, and that's not going to fix the whole problem, but it does get needed money to people that we really need to, and makes it much more tempting to kind of join in. So we have over the last couple of years increased that, but there's room to grow with that. The other numbers that you see there are just kind of adjusted accordingly. We pay kind of as a trade-off for not having other benefits. If you're here for 11 consecutive days for the same teacher, there's an increase in pay. So it's kind of like a little bit more similar to being paid like a full-time worker, and we just kind of pay those benefits as that bonus pay if you kind of consistently here. So those are the recommendations that I have, and certainly open for comment, or hopefully what I would recommend approval.
So on that paid to substitutes, you got the 90 per day, then it goes to 115 on the 11th day. Does that retroact back? Or the first 10 days are 90, then 11 through 31 will be that?
Yep. It just kind of kicks in at that point. And we're kind of limited, like our staff, when it comes to taking personal days, they can't accrue more than 10. So you couldn't like save up for a vacation and end up costing the district more, and take a 3-week vacation that costs the district an extended amount of money. But yeah.
Any other questions or comments? I have one. So when I look at this, what we're saying is we're just going to move people 2 steps. So, and we're going to move people 2 steps based on the idea that we're behind. So why don't we drop off the bottom 2 steps?
We actually did.
Okay,
it's
good.
the equivalent of moving 2 steps. It actually takes the bottom off.
Okay.
Because it's a real concern. Like trying to attract people new, and if Marcy, if you can go back up, it was, take 3% more off those. That's already, those are very low still. I would say that's not completely fixed even yet. I think it's wise to be incremental and we're not going to save the world in one swoop, but yeah.
Well, it's just really difficult to hire anybody mean, anybody to work under $9 an hour these days, really.
Very true. And most people that come in that we're trying to attract and take this job, we're gonna figure out a way to place them.
Based
It's gonna
on
be
some other
competitive.
experience or something.
Yeah.
So I mean, that's the new hiring schedule. What did that do to existing hires? We bumped them all up.
Yeah, so that's kind of that fix, which is that second sheet. So basically by cutting off the last two, we did, it would shift everybody up, but we did a hard pushback down. So every existing staff member would be pushed down 2 more cells from where they were. Effectively, all of our classified staff are looking at, so just in full kind of openness, we gave them a raise with the last recommendation as they moved, plus we added the 3%. And now this would be an additional 6% this year. So year to year, they're looking at really a 12% raise, which is very significant to try and stay competitive in this. Like I said, there's a lot of inflationary pressure when it comes to jobs. And if you talk to a lot of private industries, they can't fill positions. And I think we're trying to stay competitive in that, and so that we don't have people go out and take the job at Taco John's instead of ours. So.
We don't have Taco John's.
That's true. That's true.
Sounds pretty good right now, but we don't have it. So,
Sean, could you talk a little bit more to why it didn't pencil out for the bus drivers, the mileage versus a flat rate?
Like to be like frank, you see how like it's a dollar. We have some bus drivers that are over $1 a mile.
Yeah.
And the best we get, like what seemed kind of like a reasonable rate is that $30 an hour. If we were to take some of the mileage rates, it would have translated probably, Marcy, like $45 to $50 an hour, which we just didn't feel like was a kind of a sound place to put a bus driver on as far as an hourly pay. So just keep it at the mileage rate is what we thought. I didn't want to create a situation where, I also didn't want to create a situation where we're kind of, right now, we've got the bus drivers that we need, plus maybe even a little bit more, and then say, by the way, you're all taking a significant pay cut because we just can't pay enough per hourly wage. So I do think for those veteran bus drivers, it is paying very well. And it's probably why those are 3 kind of rock star bus drivers, they've stuck around, and it really wasn't necessarily a pay issue. It was, but also kind of starts us on a new pattern for bus drivers. So I guess that's an answer. If it didn't answer it, you can ask. Or try.
No, you did. And so like the bus driver you hired this year, she would be an hourly employee now?
Yep.
Or did you keep her a mile?
She will come on, she is an hourly employee and she receives a different rate for bus driving than for being a paramedic.
Okay. All right, thanks.
Yep.
So I have another question on the recommendation. So you said we already approved, I mean, everybody moves 1 step. And then we approved 3% on top of that already?
No.
No.
They moved 1 step and you approved that, which was 3% in June, July board meeting, whatever. And then we moved them 2 more spots. So that would be.
This is proposed.
6%.
Yeah. So I missed
9%.
So, yeah, okay, because I thought, okay, well, Christmas is coming, but it shouldn't be here just yet.
9%.
Okay, and so that's what I wanted to know. If it were that, I would propose we do this like 1 year at a time, like, add a year at a time. For one thing, it just makes it can make certain negotiations more difficult and things like that. But recognizing our situation, I understand what we're proposing here. I just wanted to check that. Anybody else have a comment or questions?
The budget, there's room in the budget for this, no problem.
I think so, yeah. But really, the classified staff are the cheapest of all the staff. And we put a big load on them. I'm not in any way, I mean, our certified staff work their buns off, but significantly more expensive. And this really is a drop in the bucket. Proverbially, I guess I shouldn't maybe use that. That's not good language, but it's relatively small in our budget size.
Will this won't affect, will affect lifeguards next year then as well? Or?
It's shifted on lifeguards too, because we just cut the whole, which I just got Ryan's report today, so it's not in the board packet and we'll discuss, but just kind of getting ahead of myself for next month. I do have concerns about just staffing next year because it looks like I know some of the lifeguards that I talked to are finding other jobs and they don't have the benefits. So it really is, they can compare apples to oranges. I can make $8.98 here, or I can make $12 an hour. Anywhere. Yeah. So there's more still to go there. At this point, we have 4 lifeguards that indicated that they're coming back.
And just to be clear, so this is the corrected one here with step 1 at lifeguards at 816.
That is the corrected one.
So we've already dropped off the 2 years.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we need to move ahead with this. If there's no other questions, we either need a motion or no.
This is Polly. I'll move to accept the classified salary schedule and hourly rates.
Thank you. We have a second?
I'll second it.
Thank you. We have a motion and a second. Any discussion on the motion or any other questions? All right, seeing none, then we'll vote. All in favor? Oh, no. Anybody opposed to the motion? Anybody abstaining from the motion? Then it's unanimous. Thank you. Thanks for your work on this. And hope it keeps us in the game.
So the next piece, Marcy, if you want to scroll down, is just personal recommendations. And, talk about that a little bit. This is some of this is a little bit performative because it's already done, but the resignation of Andrea McMillan from her 1/7 certified contract, and then also her classified duty. She took a full-time position in the Lewiston School District. We just want to thank Andrea for her time and commitment to the district. She did a great job with the kids and in the library as well. So that would be just a motion to accept her resignation. And then do we have hires? I don't have Tara on there.
Tara.
Screwed up. I didn't talk to her. Yeah. It's called personnel recommendation, so I'm going to just go ahead with my recommendation. So the other, it's not written in here in the packet, but the other recommendation that I have is that in order to replace Andrea, that we hire Tara Baldus as a 1/7 certified teacher. She's got some work to do to get her certification, but I'm excited. She was librarian down at the Nez Perce City Library and did a great job there. She'll also be doing paraprofessional duties and be full-time. And so we are incredibly excited to add her to the family of Nez Perce staff. So my recommendation is to accept Andrea's resignation and accept the hire of Tara Baldus.
Okay, thank you. So just that 1/7 is the same, similar contract to Andrea's then.
It's exactly.
Yeah. All right, thank you. And any others? No. Okay. Then we entertain a motion to approve accepting Andrea's resignation and the hire Tara Baldus.
So moved.
Thank you. Gwen, second?
I'll second it.
Seconded by Carrie. Any discussion? Hearing none, is there anybody opposed? Anybody abstain? That's unanimous. That's great. Thank you very much. Okay, next up is the leadership premium plan with job descriptions and
Continuous improvement plan.
Oh, continuous improvement.
Oh,
I
Oh, Yep, continuous
don't have
improvement
that.
plan. So you've got
It's on
copies,
the-
I've got.
Yes. So I emailed out the continuous improvement plan. I don't have it up for everybody to see here, but I really feel as if every year I kind of have big goals for continuous improvement plan and to kind of make it meaningful. Honestly, these last 2 years, I just think there's bigger priorities that the board is addressing. This it's really fundamentally, it's fairly easy to kind of fill those forms out. You can look through there. I didn't make a lot of changes. Basically, you can kind of see where our data is at, what I propose for the, goals for next year. I don't know, there was one adjustment, we used to have as a local goal for English and reading, kind of as a goal that our fourth graders would pass the ISAT at 70% proficient. The state has actually added that goal to a required state goal. And so we just shifted the goal from the fourth grade now to the fifth grade. So we want so again, the idea behind that is that we're kind of building literacy in K through 3. And then we continue that on so that by the time our students are in fifth grade, the 70+% of them are passing the English language arts on the ISAT. Other than that, it's largely the same. The narrative portion that's in there does not have to change year to year as long as we've been approved by the state and we make no significant changes to it. So one thing I would like in the future, maybe in a non-COVID year, is that we really sit down and kind of re-tackle the narrative piece. But I just don't know that it's the right time right now, I guess. It's a busy year. This document does have to be board approved and we're required to post it on our website by October 1st. But it could be edited and changed as well.
Edited before October 1st.
Yeah, I think you could edit it after October 1st too, but we have to submit a board approved plan and I would have to resubmit if we edit after that.
All right. Well, I agree that we don't, well, and we'll see what the board thinks, whether or not we need to do anything like that this year, but looking forward to next year. If you wanted to do something with the narrative on this, what kind of group would you like? Would you like a committee or with faculty and?
I think it would be good to have a board member / staff / perhaps parent to committee to sit and kind of look at that narrative. And I guess at some point, you can't just keep reusing the same narrative. You got to think, okay, what's the next step for this district? What are the things that we want to focus on and move forward? We've been a relatively high performing district. We've had good kind of test results. We've had some other things, but how do we kind of elevate it instead of just putting the same thing out there that we basically we know we're capable of achieving? So,
we've done this over the years, maybe not formally in this plan, but over the years, we've kind of sat down and looked where we are, looked at our successes, but look where do we need to kind of refocus to move forward? Is that kind of what you do here?
I think so.
Well, I think that would be great to work on over the next, look towards, what we would have to do that like in the spring, late spring.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
In an ideal world, we build that in the spring like we do with our community day, and then I'd probably hand it off to a committee at that point to bring something to the board.
Okay, I think that sounds like a good plan.
There is just one typo I noticed here, just looking at that's the very last box. It says.
The narrative of it.
Second, the second sentence, we have B should be been.
Ben. Okay.
Sorry, I just.
No, it's good.
popped that on me.
Okay, any questions on the plan as it exists? Okay, and we need to, we'd like to have a motion to approve the continuous improvement plan.
I'll move to approve the continuous improvement plan for 2021, 2022.
Thank you. Second?
I'll second it. This is Polly.
Any discussion on the motion? Here none. Is there anybody opposed to the motion? Anybody abstaining? And that's unanimous. Thanks for your work on it, even if you wanted to do more. Next year, maybe we will. Okay, now we are on the leadership premium plan, which I skipped to adeptly.
So we did do some work after consulting with some teachers and Jackie, Jackie primarily, because really it is kind of, there's building level stuff here. Every year the board's required to approve the this leadership premium plan. This is special set aside money that the district pays us based on our FTE for certified staff. There are statutory requirements about what a leadership position can be, that's listed in Idaho code, and there's statutory requirements about the minimum that an individual teacher can receive, and that's why in the plan you see everything is above a 1, although there's one exception there. That's a 0.7, but most everything is, because that's having that share is what guarantees that they're going to be over the minimum. So, and you'll see that one is, that's a 0.7, has a little requirement that you must have another position awarded in order to be eligible for that. So every year we kind of adjust things around. I guess the big adjustment, some years we require a mentor teacher for new staff. We have two staff members who are first year teachers. And so both of them are less than full-time. Matter of fact, combined, they're just over half-time. And so we just said one teacher can kind of cover both of those teachers with mentor duties. We also made a shift, and they're already named in the plan, to the COVID committee planning assistants, which are Gina and Melanie, who have been working in the summer with the COVID committee. And basically with this money, it's an opportunity to get some extra dollars to certified staff members who are kind of going above and beyond and fulfilling certain duties. Some, like the ones at the top, the secondary and elementary positions, organizational support positions, are really kind of what I consider to be, although they are not technically, there's no property rights to it. They're kind of long-term positions with staff members who have been here and shown that leadership. Most of the others, I think it's a really good idea as a district and as we make administrative decisions that we kind of spread those around a little bit and give different opportunities for people to build those leadership skills. So I think, can you scroll down just to make sure I'm not missing any, a little bit more. Oh, the one new position is that lunchtime enrichment coordinator. That was an idea that Jackie and I had. I don't know, Jackie, do you want to mention anything about that so they can
I have
a lot of
understand
kids in the lunchroom at one time, sometimes naive. And for an aide to monitor that is very difficult. I had elementary teachers sitting with their class for the first 2 weeks just to monitor and to kind of help model how do we sit at a table, and because not all kids do that anymore, and things like that. And so this particular person would be help the aide who's there, but also be present in the lunchroom and create some kinds of things that could be done every day. Every Monday, we might maybe talk about a math problem. Every Tuesday, just different things, whatever they decide to come up with. And it would just really help our kids, I think, learn to eat well with other people and to develop some manners and some social engagements that are appropriate, age appropriate. And so that's our goal there.
And the rest are basically from stuff that we had last year. And so a lot of them are valuable to the district, and we do re-examine these every single year as administrators to see if there's ones that we can trim down, if we can beef them up, if we're seeing a need for new ads, or if some aren't, maybe should be adjusted pay-wise too. So
to do take applications for these?
So that is in the process, and the deadline is Wednesday, so in 2 days, and we hope to have an administrative decision by the end of the week so that people can quickly kind of flow into these positions.
So do you need approval of the positions themselves? Is that?
I think we need an approval of the plan, and I will bring the positions themselves next.
Well, I didn't mean who was appointed to them, but
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
just the plan.
the plan. So anybody have questions or comments about the plan? So we have some latitude with the plan itself.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Why is elementary organization 2.1 and secondary 1.3?
Yeah, and Jackie can talk a little too. I can answer it, but I'll let you
Go
talk.
ahead.
I've got more coming.
Believe me, we're gonna be so tired.
Yeah.
I think there's just a lot more pieces to it, and part of the things that are in the secondary part, there'll be the teacher mentor part that's separate, the perhaps the curriculum piece that's separate, but the elementary does all of that. It does curriculum and behavior. There are some behavior supports, even though we do have a behavior separated, both the secondary and elementary. I mean, she does everything from, checking on teachers to working with IEPs, with the special ed, to flushing toilets at the end of the day. I mean, there's just a lot of pieces to it, because the kids, I think, are more needy as well. They just need more. Sometimes you're taking extra recess duties, sometimes you're sitting down with teachers and helping them with curriculum and teaching. And so it's very different for the secondary, because it's just, if we have new teachers, then there's that mentoring piece that is really more a secondary and more of a subject oriented. Like, if you're not a math teacher, you're not going to be an English teacher with a math teacher. You could, good teaching is good teaching, but still you want somebody who's more content.
I mean, the short answer is more time. It really is more time to do the elementary position with the job description than the secondary one.
And I think we've played around with those numbers a little bit to get it so it was more even with the job.
Yep.
What was the one with the secondary core project, Cabitudes implementation? Is that, we have to hire somebody outside of this?
No, and they have to be a certified employee at our district to qualify. And the only like little flag there is really, it's not a huge time consuming piece, but we did want to, pay someone for it. So the thought is they would have to have at least some other portion of this leadership premium to even qualify for that.
I see.
Because to get them above that.
Yes, to get them above that. So it does kind of limit who could apply for it. They'd have to kind of apply in conjunction with something else
Okay.
and be awarded it. But it didn't fully make sense to give that position like a full 1.1. It seemed too much.
Okay.
And a share is equal to that $900 minimum.
Yeah, oh, well, a 1.1 gets us to the minimum. A share is basically equal to the amount that we get per FTE, which it could change a little bit. It was 850 and the minimum was 900
Yeah, because they include the
benefits. So it gives,
Percy or
they get
Percy and
Percy.
Viking Medicare.
Okay, any other questions or comments? Entertain a motion to approve the leadership premium plan, if you like.
I'll move to approve the leadership plan.
Thank you. To a second.
I'll second it. This is Polly.
Okay, Polly seconded that. Any discussion on the motion? Here none, will vote. Is there anybody opposed? Maybe abstain? I could combine those next time, opposed or abstaining. Here none, then that passes unanimously. And thank you for working on that. It looks good. Next up is the co-op.
So just to share with co-op, it's every 2 years. This is something that the board addresses. It's the cooperative agreement that we submitted to the IHSA. It's actually in there because of the due date, but is football and baseball. And we have 2 different applications for each one. Just so you're aware, this one, so it would take board approval. Or I sign that the board has approved, basically. I don't need to provide minutes to apply for these co-ops from both Highland and Nez Perce. And then the other piece is that we are petitioning for the IHSA. We're like 2.5 kids over what the minimum is for Division II for football when you combine Highland and Espers. 87 point, it's 3.5, I guess, 87.5, and we can be at 84. And so we're petitioning to stay down in 1A Division II at the lower level for football because it just wouldn't be competitive. And we had every other team that we play in our division in football wrote a letter of support for that petition. We won't know about that petition until maybe the end of the month, I think is when it'll be out. But that petition is separate from the actual cooperative agreement. So all it would take here is a motion to extend the cooperative agreement that we've had in baseball and football for another 2 years.
Okay, thank you. Entertain a motion to approve the co-op for another 2 years, co-ops.
So moved.
Thank you. Do we have a second? Carrie moved.
I'll second.
Thank you, Ben. Any discussion on the motion? Okay, then we'll vote. Is there anybody opposed to the motion? Abstain from the motion? And that's unanimous. Thank you. Okay, alternate authorization. I don't even know what that one is.
So do we have any documentation there? I just have their names. So both of our part-time hires, Mrs. Lichty and Mrs. Baldus, do not have the certifications that are required by the state of Idaho for the positions that they're in. They are both very competent teachers. I've even seen them in these last 2 weeks. I'm even more impressed with the work that they're doing. But in that interim, as we're working, Mrs. Lichty is certified in another country, but it will need some time to translate that into her Idaho endorsement. We're working on that right now. And then Mrs. Baldus is working on her certification actively. And I think it's going to be a pretty easy path for her because of her education background. But in that interim, requires when we submit our alternate authorizations to get paid for those certified positions, that the board has approved, made motion and approved of an alternate authorization for Christina Lichty and Tara Baldus.
Okay, thank you. Okay, any questions on that before we move ahead? Okay, if not, we'd like to entertain a motion for this, what Mr. Deeks just explained. Alternative authorizations for these two employees.
I move to accept the alternative authorization for Mrs. Lichty and Mrs. Baldus.
Do you have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Ken. Any discussion on the motion? Hearing none then, is there anybody opposed to the motion? Abstain from the motion? That's unanimous. Thank you. We'll move that forward. How long do you suppose that'll take to get those?
The certifications. I expect with it can take anywhere with an alternate authorization between 1 to 3 years. So I think both of them have a good chance of being fully certified by the end of the year.
Oh, good.
Do we have to like reapprove every year or?
Yes.
Good until then?
No, we would have to reapprove every year.
Okay, the next item is, this is the year all school districts across the state are doing their
That's a fun pull this.
realignment. I tried to print the map out and I only got part of it, so. I think I got. I don't have part.
So this is the map that the ISBA, I can't remember the name of the company now, working in conjunction with the ISBA sent us. And then within this map, let me go over here a little bit. How do I get this in? I go down here, it's got the numbers, right? Yeah. Oh, right there. Okay, so this is what the current census says for the 2020 census says for the zones that we have. So zone 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. We are supposed to be within a 10% variance, and we're supposed to come back to the IHSA kind of with basically with a proposed plan within the next 10 days so they can kind of put it together and run the numbers, even though the numbers are pretty small, so it's pretty easy to run. As you can see in zones 3 or 2, 3, and 5, we are kind of under. And then in zone 1, we're overpopulated, and also in that percent difference doesn't look right there, Marcy.
Your, you said 4 was, you said 5 was under, but it's under.
5, yeah, 4 is under. No,
So zone 2 and zone 5 are the two that are over the 10%
gotcha.
variance.
Yep, over the 10% variance. So you can have a 10% variance, but what I'm looking at is those are actually the smaller districts. So this is actually the largest of the districts, right? This
Yes.
211. Everything else is less than that. And this is the variance from that 211, basically. So this is 19% off of that 211. Looking at this, you can see the biggest zone is zone 4. The smallest zone is zone 5, and there's about a 40-person difference. So in my mind, what I would propose to the board in those zones 4 and 5, which are these 2 town zones, when I saw this portion right here, so this block running from 4th to 5th Avenue and from Oak Street to Pine Street, which is effectively the Eller Building, St. John, and then a few apartment buildings right in here, would be a shift of 20 people from zone 4 into zone 5. And so if I open up this spreadsheet, and you can see here what these variances, if we shift 20 people, so if we change that to 191.
Am I in the right?
Let me click enable editing here. You're in the right block, yeah. So if it'll wake up in 191. No, it's not typing. Oh, there it goes. I got a 9. Welcome to this thing. 191 and shift 191 into here. Then that in and of itself gets us within that 10% on everything. So now we actually have 3 districts that are matched up. There's still a discrepancy, but there's no legal requirement to kind of fix it. We could take a look at that. I really haven't. About shift a few people into one district. It's a clean block. It gets us within the 10%. And it makes sense. I mean, if I go back to the map here, I mean, it's clean, and instead of even some of this jagged, it's just boom, boom.
But what they don't like is maps that end up looking like an arm stuck out here, somewhere.
You're just taking that one that says 20.
It would just be this block of what they consider 20 people to live in this block on the census. So as far as the numbers, Marcy and I, when we're talking about, I don't know. I mean, we're like trying to think of how they get to certain numbers, but ultimately this is what the census says, and this is what matters. When you're talking about bigger numbers, it's probably not that big a deal, but we're talking about pretty small numbers of electors.
When their election takes place in November, they will have, a person from representing a zone, but then this hits, and all of a sudden the new people they've just elected will be out of their zone, and so they'll go off the board. The board will have to it's not, it can, even in big districts, be a big headache. But this is a great solution if the board is pleased with it. Very easy, and it'll pass muster. That's the main thing too.
Yep.
I think I don't know that there's a significant reason to mess around with the rest of it if it matches, How often do we do this? Like every
10 years?
10 years. Yeah, we got to redraw it with the census. So.
Question for you, because we pay, there's quite a bit of money we spent to pay this company. What did they do? If we have to submit them the new drawing?
It's a good point. They have the expertise to access the census database, they have our maps of our existing map. They overlay that, they look for adjustments. Now, there's a second part that we won't have to pay, right? Because we're not doing that kind of next advanced service for them to kind of come up with a solution for us. But this is the baseline, they access the data, they put it into a nice map.
So they would come up with a solution for it.
No, I don't think
Or is
so. I
this,
think
this will be
this,
both.
the first one was for them to look at it and come up with those numbers that you see. The second one is for them to go in and change the map and to give you new legal descriptions.
That's worth, I mean, I could look into having someone else write up legal descriptions.
Just curious,
for us.
I mean, because it just so happens that we don't have to change much, so it's kind of like. what did
Why are we
do?
gonna pay another, yeah. Yeah. I would be willing to look into that piece of it. I mean, either way, I think if the board kind of approves that plan, I could talk to, you know, if there's a property attorney or someone else who could do it for cheaper. Because what was the total
It
cost?
was just expensive.
4,000 for
Maybe
each leg or
They're
something.
with such a small adjustment, maybe they'll give you a break.
Maybe Polly.
I was gonna say you need legal descriptions.
To be honest with you, my head was talking to people about what we need. I don't know right now. So I can't really communicate it.
Maybe you can find
So
out.
that
Dr.
it-
Molly.
Yeah, it's a legal description of like the different boundaries.
But we have existing boundaries, so all we have to do is come up with
That, yeah,
a
so
change.
maybe just talking to this company and saying, hey, we have one small adjustment. Can you knock off the price?
Right.
But,
Okay, I will follow up with that and let you know.
Okay.
Either way, I think it'd probably be good to approve that
Oh,
as
yeah.
the plan.
I move to approve this small change to our zone districting.
Thank you. Do you have a second?
I'll second it.
Any discussion? Hearing none, then we'll vote. Is there anybody opposed to the motion? Abstain from the motion? Okay, then it's unanimous. Next up is our second reading of policy. We're so spoiled by short meetings that, and we still have, safe school discussion to go through. So I'm just reminding us that we went over a summary of all these policies last time. You've had time to look at them. They're included in your packets. Mr. Teagues has looked at them and has not suggested any changes after the summary we got last time. So it's the pleasure of the board. We can delve into them further if you like now and work on second reading in detail and approve them. We can approve them as they exist from our first reading, or we can have a third reading and put them off until next month. The pleasure of the board. Yeah, Jeff, I guess we could start out. Does anybody have any questions about any of the policy updates that we were provided for first reading last month and we have in our packets now?
I don't have any questions unless, does Sean have anything that
I don't have
you
anything.
think that is glaring that we should revisit?
No, I think are my recommendations in here from last?
I think, are they in the separate email that we?
That I emailed out before last meeting is when it would have been. Yeah, I guess they just see the. No, I don't have anything new to add. I will tell you with everything else that I'm not perhaps fully prepared to address each one, although I certainly can look at the policy and the ISBA review. But there's nothing that concerned me in any of those policies specifically. And we would, continue to keep our C series for now, the COVID related series of policies.
Yeah. Well, they don't expire on a date, do they?
They do not.
No.
They're just
so-
kind of sitting there for
Yeah.
eventual repeal.
So if we do nothing, they're still gonna be there, the state
Right,
policies.
correct.
We don't have to prove these now, but so how come, I don't want to rush you all into it if you don't feel comfortable with it. At the same time, I don't know if you want to spend another half hour talking about them right now. But we can.
If we want to move this to the next meeting, we just need a motion to postpone.
We don't have to, you don't even have to have a motion.
For the lack of a motion to approve them, we could just. leave it
Just
on
have
the
a third,
agenda.
we just have a third reading.
Seems like a reason.
I don't know. I mean, is there a reason why? I mean,
I
approve them today? I mean, like Ken said, we've had time to look at them, so.
There's a couple of policies that are optional policies. They weren't required policies.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think you recommended adoption, but I can't
In
remember.
my document.
You had on policy 2220, do not approve, and 5100,
Oh, yeah.
do not approve.
Thanks, Marcy.
So two policies, 2220 and 5100 were do not approve. The rest were approved. Were there a couple of options? too?
Yeah, and I didn't get those written down. And I don't know if there's any other do not approve, but those were the two that I got. So this would be 2220. This was the jumpstart kindergarten.
Yeah.
And 5100. Process.
I don't know. Is there an edit in there? If we keep scrolling down.
Maybe it was an option. I don't know.
Yeah, I think it was an option. But we already have that one currently selected, so. I don't remember. My recommendation is to be careful, and I will be better prepared for next meeting to kind of discuss it just in case, and so it doesn't appear that we're just passing something without me being able to speak to all of it, so. I would recommend treating it as a second reading, and we'll tackle it one more time next week.
That works. Is that okay with you, Holly and
Yeah. Yep.
Sandy?
Yes.
Okay. Done. Next up, safe continuation of in-person instruction, continuity of services plan. In other words,
For the rest of the meeting. I can try to share it again. Justice. Trying. Oh, that's it.
this is page 139 of your packet.
So,
Whenever you have a pack with over 150 pages, you're in.
good night.
Okay.
So this has come up fairly recently. We were in operation, this plan was approved. As everybody knows, and the parents, I saw a funny cartoon the other day, or it was supposed to be funny. It said that it had a parent working from home, and he said, I'm gonna have to quit my jobs just so I can keep up with the deluge of district emails that I received. So it is our environment. We have had, it went out to parents, it's technically public information now. We've had 6, 7 cases of COVID positive since the school years began. It'll be counting since when athletics began in our building. Prior to today, it was primarily focused in the secondary building. And then as of today, there's some movement in the just kind of what I would call like the district level where they're interacting with students in K through 12 and then also in the elementary. So that kind of increased spread. Well, 2 of those cases occurred just during sporting events, and the 5 have occurred in really the time span of a week plus today. So kind of a bubble of increasing cases, I guess I would say. With that, that kind of fostered a call for me to talk to Lenny Bonner, or formerly Lenny Higgins, who is the CEO of St. Mary's and Clearwater Valley Health. And then after visiting with Lenny, a visit with Dr. Kelly McGrath from Clearwater Valley Hospital. And I want to share a little bit of what the things that they told me, and then talk with the board a little bit about what I'm recommending as a leader of this district. So they both Lenny and Dr. McGrath strongly recommended us to require masks for our kids. They are, according to Lenny, in and out of crisis standards of care at both St. Mary's and Clearwater Valley Hospital. One of the things that they explained to me, and this is just for everybody, I think board and those public that are listening or listening to this recording later, oxygen is a real issue for these small hospitals. They kind of, when you receive oxygen, you receive it in a tank and it's been compressed enough where it's in a liquid form. And what happens is the way the oxygen systems work in our hospitals is that liquid, there's no pump or anything to deliver this gas. That liquid warms up with the room or ambient temperature, and oxygen boils out of the liquid oxygen and turns into gaseous oxygen. That's the oxygen that's then put into the pipes that flows into people's rooms. And every hospital room has an oxygen supply that's available there. Well, so there's no other way to get oxygen other than to let it evaporate. Over the course of a day, as oxygen demand goes up, more and more oxygen boils off. And that process, I'm a former science teacher, is a cooling process. So what happens is the tank that holds the oxygen starts to cool off, and it cools itself off to a point, and as it cools off, less oxygen is able to boil off. So there's this cool off and then less oxygen. So as the more oxygen you use, the less oxygen that tank can actually provide for the day. They, prior to this point, had operated fine, never knowing that there was some sort of theoretical limit on the oxygen that's available. They have found out in the last 2 weeks that they have approximately 150 liters of oxygen that they can get out of that tank in a day. They've never come anywhere close to that, and they've hit it several times in the last couple of weeks. That's all that they have, I guess. That's what their system is set up to do. We have 4 ventilators in those 2 hospitals combined, and they're trying their best to share them as needed. The other thing that Lenny passed along is that it is incredibly difficult at this point to get a transfer to any other hospital anywhere. Story about a patient who they called for 41 different hospitals, a non-COVID patient that was looking for a transfer. 41 different hospitals that ranged from Portland, Oregon, and the Pacific Coast, Seattle, all the way to Billings, Montana, and all the way south to Salt Lake City and north to the border, to try and find a spot before they found a spot. Another story about a patient who was a COVID patient that they finally found a spot in Idaho Falls to transfer him or her, I don't know, to transfer the patient. And they could not, because the helicopter wasn't able to take the amount of oxygen that they need, that required for the patient to get that far away. It would have required an airplane or something like a faster form of travel for that. And the one thing that I heard from both of them is that the situation is bad. I mean, I think we already knew it was bad. But talking to both of them throughout the morning, it is a really bad situation. And I still do feel, and I've talked a lot about our kids and their safety. Our kids with this, I asked them the question about, well, what about kids? Are you seeing more cases? And they're seeing more cases of kids, but a lot of that is because kids are kind of the unvaccinated group right now. And Delta is incredibly contagious. They don't feel like the Delta virus in itself is an increased risk to children. And they also echo that children are at a relatively low risk. But children can spread the virus. And both were very clear that they think that masks can help us kind of get through this, what I would consider to be a peak of a pandemic, right as we're kind of hitting this very top piece. Just kind of looking through a few of my other notes. The system is in failure mode. So I was writing, quotes. It's kind of at its bubble, and there really is no room. I mean, I've heard it over the last couple of weeks, repeated, but you better not get in a car accident or have a heart issue right now. And I think that holds true. Well, I don't think the schools can like fix it all magically, or especially our little school can fix it all magically. I do think that we play a role in this bigger picture of what's going on. And I think we can help. We were really lucky today to have a man come in to speak with us. He had spoken at St. Bosco last week. And I kind of stumbled on him, and I had him come to speak about his role in 9/11. And he was a firefighter in Utah, in Salt Lake City, and they responded to 9/11. And so he came and talked to our kids in grades 5 through 12 today about kind of how 9/11. So he showed up for the cleanup and for what they thought originally was going to be a rescue, but really came to finding bodies is what they did. And so he talked to kids about that, and he talked to that unifying piece of kind of the 9/12, the 12th of September when we got together. And it got me thinking a lot about another analogy. He did a great job of saying it's time to unite. It's time to kind of get over our differences and find a common way that we can work together. The analogy that I came up with after listening to that would be the World War II victory gardens. If you're a historian, you know that in World War II, everybody planted a garden, and you made it extra big because it was a way that we kind of could take a little bit of pressure off, the war and the production that we needed for the war. There was no 100% scientific evidence that planting a victory garden would have any impact in our war effort. I don't know if it did or didn't. I don't even know if there's been a study that showed one way or the other. At the end of the day, it just might have meant that grandma had a few more tomatoes than she had last year. But it made a difference. And to me, it represented, a place where as Americans, we came together, and we tried to do something. Maybe the evidence wasn't 100% there, but we tried to do something to make it better than it was. And so with that, and with the situation that I was kind of presented with today, and probably tie that together, because I don't think it's really changed for the hospitals much over the last 2 weeks. With our current situation of facing what I think will likely develop into a bigger bubble of cases. And I don't have this written out in policy form, but I would like to recommend to the board to consider to require masks in indoor buildings at all times indoors, except for when eating,
for a set period of time, a set brief period of time. To me, kind of right in the middle of this peak of this Delta virus wave that we're facing, to a set period of time. I guess my initial proposal, and I'm open to have the board discuss how they feel, but my initial proposal would be to consider going through up to the fair, setting some hard kind of clear boundaries so that, because I want to recognize that people have concerns about masks and putting masks on children. So setting some hard confines that there would be a definitive end date to kind of ease some of those concerns, but to help temporarily kind of push us over this finish line, I guess, of this wave. I do know it's incredibly difficult. I haven't heard directly from people. I don't want people who are listening to feel it. It says Sandy is waiting to be admitted. I don't know if she dropped off. I know there's a lot of feelings about this and a lot of passion about this. I pulled my staff together after school and told them I was going to do this. I'll be very frank about myself, I guess, as a leader for this district. I think this is the right thing to do. I feel that very strongly. I realize that there are people that are going to disagree with me, and I am 100% ready to deal with those ramifications. I want to keep my staff and students safe. I believe we have a role in our community and in our region to do what's right for other people. I understand, I'll say it, I don't know, I can't give anybody an exact number of what wearing a mask is going to do, but I think it does help in some way. And even if it's small, if we're here now where we can't get enough oxygen to flow in Cottonwood and in Orfino, I think it's time for us to take a step and do our part as best we can. I am ready as a leader to face the people who disagree with me. I respectfully, I understand their points. I don't want kids to wear masks any more than they do, or my staff, but I strongly believe that it's time to do it for again, a definitive amount of time with maybe some clear metrics so that parents can feel good about it, or at least better.
Sandy's up there again.
I don't know where all this leads. And we right now in our school could have enough COVID seated that perhaps the masks aren't going to do what I kind of anticipate. I do know CAMI, who doesn't have mask mandates, posted on their Facebook page that they've seen more cases in the last 2 weeks than they saw in the last 18 months prior to this. So it is contagious amongst our kids. Delta variant is more contagious with the younger population, which wasn't the case last year. I think we've shown as a district that when cases go down, we are willing, like we did last March, April, and May, to remove the mask requirements. I think now is the time to put them in place. It is, again, not an easy decision. I am certain that there will be people that very vehemently disagree with me. I also think that there's an element of this is happening just right now. I want to assure people, I guess, from my perspective, that this was not something that I had planned. This is an increase of case in our schools to now 7, and conversations with hospitals that are just flat overwhelmed in our region and don't have places to send people. So I'm willing to take any questions. I'm willing to help the board, forge a policy that they would find to be reasonable. I guess the last piece I want to say is I know the polling data we've polled. Okay, we know that the majority of parents in this district do not want their kids in masks. That's very, very clear. Not the vast majority, but a majority of parents.
I understand that. I think sometimes as leaders in our community, we have to lead, and it's really tough. And that is my recommendation.
So I guess I'll obviously say, I think one of the big reasons that people would be concerned about it is how effectively are we mitigating things when they leave here and they're not wearing masks and they're interacting and what do you say to that?
I think it's a fair and valid point to talk about why would we do something when they just go outside of this building and they're not going to wear masks. And I think we saw that last year. I think it's, I don't buy the argument, because whatever little impact we can have, it might be even more if we all just kind of united and decided to do it throughout our whole lives. But whatever impact we have, even if it's small, it can multiply. Dr. McGrath said in this region right now, what they're finding is it used to be one person who had COVID spread it to 2.5 people. It is now one person who has it spreads to 6 is their number for the Delta variant. So if we can prevent 1 or 2 of those spreads, those movements, then I think it's worthwhile to do. And if we can keep it on a tight timeline and have people understand that this isn't a forever or drag out thing, then I still think it's beneficial, even if it's, you know, not the most benefit that we could possibly get.
So obviously, I haven't even thought too much about fair, honestly, but that's obviously coming up. And so if we mask right up until fair, and we go to fair, and then fair happens, and then we come back, what do we come back to? I mean, I guess we just don't know.
We don't know, and I think we have to address that. Another option I think for the board to consider as we get this little bubble. I mean, I guess there's kind of 3 options. We can stay the course. And I think, or you can ask Orfino Elementary, Cambria Elementary, Cul-de-sac Elementary, Timberline Elementary and High School, how that ends. From what I've seen from every one of those schools is they shut down and kids stay at home. Probably doing a lot of those mixing anyways. They stay at home and they don't get their education. And we talk to the State Department and we say, well, we got enough hours. We're just going to kind of lower our standards, not replace them. Or we take those weeks and we say, well, we're going to stack them on in June now. And we, potentially do that a couple of times, or I don't know, like after the fair, or after, this week, and we try and figure out what's an optimal level of spread. Or, we give the mask thing a try. I don't think it was completely masks that stopped the spread last year, but we're past our cases last year that we had for students, not for staff yet. So those are my thoughts.
Other questions, comments?
Comment there, I mean, if we're doing, thinking math, we still got these kids playing sports, and then they're not masked. I'm just kind of the deal that if we're going to do it, we have to do it across the board, but it goes back to the kids have to do it after school. Otherwise, we're not gaining anything. And I think the kids lose a lot of social interaction without seeing facial expression.
It is very human to see a face. It's very natural. And I think that's why all of us, I think all of society, when a chance this summer to rip the masks off, it wasn't like it really hung on, especially in this region. It was interesting to me still in the conversations with both Lenny and with Dr. McGrath. Neither one of them actually proposed to me, although, later on in the conversation it came up. That's my warning that I've gone too long in this meeting, but you have to actually push it. They didn't propose closing the schools, which is because they both have kids in Orfino School District. They know what a miserable failure online learning was. Everybody knows what a miserable failure online learning was. This isn't a choice of and sometimes as leaders and as school boards or other organizational bodies, we have to make these decisions. But this isn't option A, gold shiny nugget, and option B, a pile of chicken manure. It's both are not fun options, I guess I would say. Neither one is really ultimately in the long term acceptable, but I think we need to have our kids in school. I think, Quinn, that when it comes to sports, is there a little bit of a discrepancy there? Yeah, they're playing volleyball, they don't have to wear their mask, but they're sitting in class and they do. Yeah, although I would say, a classroom doesn't have the same like oxygen requirements that playing a sport does. And I don't want to put a mask on someone playing sports, and I don't want to end sports. And so if we can, again, in some way, limit their exposure here, then perhaps it allows us to keep doing those other things, I guess would be my argument for it.
So
But
wearing masks in the class is gonna slow things down enough to where we can keep things running, but it's not gonna solve the problem, but we don't have
yeah,
the optimal solution.
honestly, I wish I could say with 100% certainty that wearing masks is going to completely fix this problem. I don't even know that. And there is the potential that, I mean, the seed could have been laid by now, and we could be, facing in the next couple of days a really big bubble of potential cases, and that really got planted before any sort of mass discussion.
Regarding sports and, so we have football and we have volleyball going right now. I would get, the way it goes is for football, the kids, once they enter a school building, they wear masks. Because they're outside, so they're not really covered by masking. For volleyball, if they're on the floor, they don't wear masks, but if they're sitting in a bench or they're in the locker room, then they wear masks. That's the way we've done with that.
That would be right.
That would
So
be
an
what we
exemption to the sports teams.
Okay, thanks. Any other questions? I've got a couple. So do you have a number from those, anybody you've talked to or the district as far as COVID cases in our community, but not in our school?
That data's on the dashboard.
Okay.
I don't have the most recent. I can bring it up and tell you how many what they consider to be active cases are in our zip code right now.
Okay.
As you guys are discussing too, I can.
While you're doing it, you can probably answer questions while you do it. So, do we have pending tests of students now?
There are pending. I'm trying to think. There are no tests right now where a kid has taken it and we're waiting for results.
Okay.
But there are a few where a kid is ill and we don't make the teacher or we don't make the parent take a test or the student take a test, but the parent is considering allowing them to test.
Okay.
Which another thing today, St. Mary's, a student got turned away that they didn't have enough of those rapid response tests that were still PCR. They're running out of the testing materials. We do have a different test called a vault test, which is a PCR DNA test that takes about 2 to 3 business days.
Took a little longer for us than it did for you.
And I'm sure it's kind of bumping up right now. But it's an overnight delivery. If you can get it to St. John's Hardware by noon, it goes overnight. Normally it's there the next day. And then they say within 24 to 48 hours, they email you a test result. So. Here.
So when you were talking to Dr. McGrath and Marnie, was their feelings, do you think that they would like to see all the schools in our area masking? Or is it based on the fact that they think we have enough cases where that's okay?
I think both of them would tell you that they would like to see every school in this region masking full-time indoors right now. You can just, here's another example. This is a little, can you look here for 83543? I don't know which one it is. Oh, there it is. We have 21 open cases in our town right now. I think.
By town, you mean zip code.
County.
Yeah, this isn't Lewis County. This is the next first zip code. So it doesn't, I mean, we have people that live in Craigmont zip code, maybe Ferdinand and Camei zip codes at least. But that's our current one. We have 31, we have 50 total. 40% of the active cases in Lewis County have occurred right now. Oh yeah, we're Orfino as well.
Okay, so it was another example that I was gonna bring up. When I called Lenny, she's the CEO of two big, relatively large hospitals in our region. She was working in a tent outside of a hospital to pre-screen people who were coming in to get a COVID test without an appointment, and to kind of check with them. In our short, conversation, she had to interrupt 3 times so that she could help another new person coming in that hadn't been registered to kind of get set up to get tested. So when you have the CEO of an organization that's doing that work, it shows how stretched thin people are. The other piece that I'll say as a school leader is that we have 2 staff members out now that are quarantined, and we did not find a sub for either one of them today. So Jackie filled in music, and we just kind of make do with the other position. I would just tell you this from the bottom of my heart. I have a really hard time calling a retired teacher, vaccinated or not, but calling a retired teacher who's 70, 80 years old, who are rock stars of substitutes, and saying this is a good time to come in and hang out with kids. And we don't have any. Now we've got a couple maybe coming back online that weren't able to this week, but it's short. The pay, even with an increase, isn't much. And as a substitute, you're coming in here and just kind of throwing it all out on the line. So it makes it hard for staffing too. And one other piece that I'll throw in there is that this first part of school and our attendance rate drives the majority of funding that our district receives. So these first weeks are so essential to get our ADA so that our certified staff, and well, all of our staff, we can receive the appropriate student funding. And so we've done things like with the fair and before in the past with opening day hunting season, because if you're going to have a day, you don't want it to be disrupted. Our attendance is impacted right now. And even though we're not requiring people to quarantine, there are people that are deciding to, or people that just test positive, and it's not normal in September.
Okay, on that note, as long as they're communicating with their teachers.
Yep, that we do.
So that shouldn't be really hurting our.
It's an issue though with getting kids to engage when they have to be at home.
Especially if they're sick or something.
It's not perfect. We have though, and we are counting kids as online if possible. Not ideal, but it will help.
I have 2 more questions. One is, in our plan, if we did go with this, it says we meet, the mask should meet specifications. Did we do something like that last time we had masking, or we just anything?
Yeah, and we left that in there, I think, because really masks are just optional in the plan right now. And so if we're gonna have optional masks, kind of the thought is that, well, they should at least meet the specifications that the CDC recommends. You're trying to balance being realistic with what, to ask everybody to wear an N95 right now or something like that. We just don't have that supply.
Okay. My last question was, so you mentioned an ending date if we did go with masks, and you said like after the fair or something. And Carrie asked the question like about the fair, and we had COVID active during, in the community during the fair last year. And so would it be wise to kind of look at maybe a window after the fair rather than just like right after the fair, maybe if we did something like this, 10 days or something, or 2 weeks? Have you thought about that?
I haven't for sure. Originally I thought
what I was thinking is maybe just 2 weeks to kind of ease into this and let people know that we are, it is, I mean, there's nobody in this room that is excited to put kids or staff in masks, but that sounds reasonable to me. And with the potential of the fair and spread at the fair to kind of continue it on a little bit.
The fair is, on the one hand, basically outdoors. But on the other hand, you're mixing cohorts essentially. You're bringing kids up from Kamiah, kids from, and adults as well. So you're essentially mixing communities. That's, I think, the a precautionary note.
As you're kind of proposing this, Sean, have you given any thought to how many kids we're gonna lose? You talked about attendance, and I know there's several parents talking that they'll pull their kids out.
Would they homeschool rather than mass?
They would, yes, they would homeschool or transfer to a different school rather than mass.
Yeah.
I think we'd lose quite a few numbers.
It's tough. And
Do you think people would pull their kids out of this school and take them to a different school where if they had to mask for, say, maximum 3 weeks?
Yeah, I do.
That's the feedback I'm getting too.
Sean, are we online right now?
We are online right
School
now.
shuts down.
Yes.
How many people are online? How many people are listening right now?
There were, earlier in the meeting, there were 9, and it still says 9 or 9 watching right now.
Okay, thanks.
I'm getting the same emails that they're gonna pull their kids and go to a different school district.
I guess I would just ask those people, if you pull your kids from here and take them to another school district and it explodes there and they shut down, so then you pull them from there and we just bounce the kids around to school districts, or we're not the only people facing this.
I agree 100%, but I also see,
I mean, I know, I'm just speaking to that. I'm not trying to argue. I'm just.
oh, no.
I don't.
Like you said, they mask at school. But with having the grocery store, I have them in there at lunchtime and after school, and they have 9 kids sitting at a table shoulder to shoulder.
Yeah, I don't have a definitive answer for sure on, I mean, I do think we shared the surveys before the school year started about where people generally are. That survey didn't ask the question, would you pull your kid? I think over the next couple of days, depending on what the board decides to do, I find out pretty quick, but you're right. And I think, there's concern about the levy, I'll just say it, or how people feel about that with our district. It's something that has, eaten at me for the entire summer, for all last year in making these decisions, and all the way up until this moment right here. I've thought about it, I've pondered it. What I hope is that if this were to be approved, that I'm willing at this point to take the heat. This is my recommendation. I think it's what's right for my staff and my students. And I'm willing to advocate for that because, it is tough. And sometimes we do have to do a straw poll and say, where are we at? How's everybody feel? How can we kind of make everybody happy and try and work it out? And then there are times that a leader has, or, I don't want to call myself a leader, a person has to step up and just say, this is what I think is the right direction for our kids, for my building, for my staff. And that is, that's how I feel. And that's where I'm at. And ultimately, if that isn't what the community wants, then I will not, I don't want to sound threatening. If they don't want me here, then that's fine too. But I believe in this and I believe in my staff, and I think we can keep it to a limited amount of time. And I know this is hard. I know people don't like masks. I talk to the doctors. I talk to the people that I care about. I read. I trust in the institutions that we have, and that's where I'm at. Now, I am also an employee of the school board, and I will work with the school board on how we can continue to move forward.
Well, we're another thing to consider here. well, like Timberline was closed, I think for what, at least 10 days or
Yeah.
something like that. I kind of took a, I think Cami now has, I think about 4 different grades under quarantine.
It's a little convoluted in their post.
Uh-huh. And so, I mean, looking at our levels right now, we're not very far away from reaching our, like, what is our high level? Is it 10?
Yeah, 10 is what we did define.
That's what we had
So
defined.
one other thing for the board to consider is that I do understand if this is passed tonight and like we have to meet kids at the front door tomorrow who aren't, their parents aren't watching this meeting, that it could be an issue. So another thing to consider is that we put in a timeline to implement masks. Now, somebody might say, well, why don't, if it's important, you need to do it now. I don't necessarily have an answer for that other than this is a political, I mean, it's the world we live in and we have people to deal with and work with. We want to make them feel comfortable. We want to make them feel like we're all working together and not trying to.
I guess that's the thing. What if we feel like things get to the point where, okay, we need to shut down again? No one wants online school. No one wants to bring their kids home and do that. So what's the answer there? What if we're forced to where we have to do that for 2 weeks like Timberline did? I mean, then what's the community's response? To me, it seems like masking for a short period of time to try to prevent having to shut the school down. I don't like wearing masks. I don't like my kids wearing masks, but I also like my kids going to school, so.
What? Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like on that survey that most people, like, just like Carrie said, they don't want to wear a mask, but they're willing to do it to keep their kids in school.
Yeah, we could go back. I don't have that right at the top of my feed. I could go back. I think you're basically right, Polly. Yeah.
I mean, I'm not in a position to homeschool my kids. So, I mean, I think most people aren't.
I am, but I don't want to, and I don't want other people to have to.
And that I'm not qualified. But I don't know. I mean,
The parents that are saying they're gonna pull their kid and take them to a different school, it's like, well, what good does that do? Their schools are having the same issues.
Yeah, there are other schools that are treating this differently, I guess. I mean, there's other schools around that are, you know, there's not necessarily the same quarantine rules. There's others right now that have stricter quarantine rules than ours. Potlatch just added a mask requirement. Moscow has a mask requirement. Lapway has a mask requirement. The Moscow charter schools also have mask requirements. Potlatch kind of proactively made that decision too. Those are the ones that I know of.
So you just rattled off the Moscow Potlatch schools. Is there a Latah County thing going on up there?
I just think it's probably generally the way their communities feel it, and there's in their decision. I mean, we're all driven by.
As far as you know, it wasn't
There's not
mandated by the county.
There's not a city in Moscow.
No.
That's when
It is just a school one at this point.
They had one earlier, but it's not.
Yeah, those are all, you know, they taught other than Lapway.
So was it Potlatch the one I seen that's doing temperature checks?
Yeah, Potlatch is also doing temperature checks. The CDC actually early on in the pandemic, and we kept doing it all last year, kind of said it's not worth doing. We really didn't. We had a couple that we sent home after they'd kind of said they had symptoms, and then we did a temperature scan. I don't think last year there was, and Jackie, correct me if I'm wrong, there was a single instance where we scanned a kid, they had a temperature, and they ended up going home. I don't think.
And a lot of times it's not gonna register.
Yeah.
And they still have symptoms.
There were a few times they were symptomatic, and then they'd come over and we'd scan and they had a fever and they had to go home. So it was nice to have those, but as far as like the
Everybody, every day. No.
it didn't catch anyone for us. But our cases were a lot lower too. And we're in it's a different place. Like we could go back on this dashboard and look at, September 11th, 2021 compared to a September 11th, 20 in our region. And there's a big difference with where we're at right now. As far as that level of spread.
I think that's in this one.
I mean, my concern with this whole thing is, I mean, COVID's not going away.
Yeah.
So masking for 2 weeks, what are we really doing? The talk has always been not to overwhelm the hospitals and our care deals. But at some point, this has to end. I mean, we can't continue to live this way. And I said, I don't really have the answer either, because my understanding is the people that have the initial COVID, even though they have antibodies, that does no good for the Delta variant. Or, I mean, no good, but limited. So, I mean, I'm of the opinion, we just need to let it go, run its course and see where we end up. I mean, or get more cases and we need to revisit it and look again, but. And especially community members, well, let's do it 2 weeks or 3 weeks. That's been played in this COVID pandemic.
That's
2 weeks to stop this.
right. It does bring up that thought.
I mean, there's definite resentment to, resentment ain't the right word, to any, when we put a firm timeline on it. Because we don't know if we can hold to that timeline.
We don't, we have to revisit it. We
Yeah.
have to say, that's how long we want it to be, but if things are 4 times as bad in 2 weeks from now, we might have to.
We
Yeah.
will change.
The state epidemiologist and their modeling, which there's been some modeling in this pandemic that's been really off. But I'll tell you, on this wave, if you go back and look, and I have the presentation from that lady about what they kind of modeled out for a peak in Idaho, it has almost matched the curve that they predicted so far almost perfectly in this wave. And they have it peaking at 10/10, October 10th. So that's a ways away. We might be ahead of that as a local region because we were a little ahead on this wave in the state of Idaho. And they are saying that could potentially be 3,000 cases a day, and we're just kind of hitting this part really quick. I do see some evidence at the state level that we are, but I'm not an epidemiologist, that we are at or maybe just past the peak, but I don't know that for sure.
You're thinking at a state level, we're past the peak and on the downslope.
I think we might be, but I don't know that.
Because your model, you said, if we go by their model, we're talking 30 days before the peak, so we're probably talking another 30 till we get back to the level we're at now.
Yeah.
We're talking 2 months.
Right.
Fully.
So I don't know what's gonna happen for sure. That their model says it's still gonna keep going up. If we can go look at the state data, it appears to me that we're at least starting to round that curve, I guess, or maybe down, I don't know. But sometimes you can get some data that wavers, and you think, oh, this is the top of the curve, and it's not. We don't know that for sure. And all of the cases that we had last year came right at the peak, because that's when people are out and exposed.
Question for you, Sean, and fellow board members. And we've all heard from people that don't want masks. Has anybody really heard from any of our constituents that want masks?
I have.
I've also heard from several who wonder why we're not wearing masks.
I've had one phone call and they want masks. But is it possible to send out a notice, Sean, to parents saying that you highly recommend the students and staff wear masks, but leave it up to them if they want to?
What was that? I know you said you met with the teachers and staff after school today. What were their feelings?
First time ever that school
Sandy, are you there?
Yes,
Did we get kicked out?
I'm thinking so.
Okay. My audio is, I didn't hear anything you just said.
I didn't either.
Okay. Did you get kicked out earlier?
Yes.
Oh. I don't know how to get back in.
I went to the calendar and went to those.
Oh. Okay, good. Huh. Oh, Cody got kicked out.
Oh.
We might as well just have a board meeting over text. What calendar did you go to? In our,
The Gmail calendar, the,
oh. Oh, okay. I tried to get back into my, on that email, but it's like not let, I don't know if it,
oh,
maybe
mine
it timed out.
post will let you in soon.
Oh, there we go. Okay.
Looks like we're back on now, Polly. Can you hear us okay?
Okay.
Looks like we just had a big old drop in our internet. So we decided to recess for just a second, just until
Okay.
you two to join back on. They'll be back, and I might go grab a drink really quick, and then no, just water.
You might need something stronger. Oh.
My back, I can't sit for that long. I can't stand for that long.
Take volleyball games over.
We lost in 5.
Yeah.
Barely, it's close.
5.
Yeah. Into the season, you'll see a lot different results. You make a lot of young, a lot of young mistakes.
Yeah, it's always fun to see how they will.
Yeah.
You've been trying to innovate at home, Polly's office.
She's gonna left her camera home. It looks like we're going now because there's no camera.
All right, Polly and Sandy are back on?
Yes.
Yep.
Okay. So we'll continue again. I just want to clarify. Our superintendent's recommendation is for students and staff to wear masks indoors in the Nez Perce School District starting.
I think that could be up for discussion. I guess what I would first throw out is just effective immediately in our district. It would, just to clarify, it would be any person inside a building.
Correct, yeah.
So that,
So that would be volleyball games.
and the one exception would be
Hot games.
eating. And so eating and participating actively in an athletic practice or competition.
Starting effective immediately and end date of, you mentioned an end date.
I had originally, I think the Wednesday before we go to the fair.
My quick question, so that does then require people to wear masks at our games. Are any of the teams that we're playing against, do they have that?
I don't know that any that we're playing against. Lapway has that rule, Moscow has that rule. Potlatch is will
Last year, there was direction on that from IHSAA.
Yeah,
Games, I believe.
we had to have a plan with that.
But IHSAA hasn't said anything so far this year.
No, I don't. I mean, I think like all of us were, a lot of people were tired of getting kind of beat up and everything. The rush hands off and letting local districts do what they want to do.
With your recommendation, is the school prepared to supply masks to all the kids?
I think we have a supply that would last that duration. Of this local or, and hopeful, I mean, I also think there are people that still have masks at home that would help with that, but we have cloth masks, a limited supply now, less than what we had last year. We still have some of those cotton white ones, and then lots of disposable wanted to last through that first. Now, if that were to continue on, I don't know that we have to look for that.
Okay, so I think we restated the recommendation. I mean, there's a lot of ifs and crystal ball gazing we can do. But I think what superintendent is asking us to do is either take action on this motion or this recommendation or not. So I'd kind of like to call for or ask if anyone would like to make a motion regarding the recommendation. Or if you have further questions, we can, I don't want to cut that off. But at the same token, I think it's somewhat of a, there's enough unknowns out there, we could go down that trail for quite a while. I appreciate the conversation we've had so far, though I think you've all contributed and asked some good questions and made some good statements, so.
I don't know that I need to make this motion, can I move that we just stay the course until there's more cases, and then the board may revisit it at a special meeting as needed?
You may move that.
You said, I don't know if I need the motion.
Sure can.
I just let it die, but-
No, you can make that motion and.
Yeah, I move we stay the course until we decide we need a special meeting to reevaluate.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
Quinn, how many more cases?
Probably till we get to that 10 number. I believe we had a 10 active case number.
And so what are we at right now, Sean?
Well, I guess
Five?
As far as active cases, we're at 5. As far as total cases, we're at 7. So you're assuming you're talking about active.
I'm talking about active, because I've been in the 2 that happened back before school started. They're done,
We have a couple others that will be relatively soon coming off. Because of the timeline of when they first had them. But yeah.
So we could be at 10 by the end of the week.
Could be,
Could be.
or may not.
And then what happens if we're 10 by the end of the week and then a couple of those get better and then do we drop the mask back off until we're back up to 10? What is that?
What I am making a motion for
If we
is,
get to 10,
until we
then
get
have a
to
special
10,
meeting.
then we'll need a meeting to decide how we want to proceed from there.
Sean, I don't know if you answered and we got cut off, but how did the staff feel? You said you talked to them after school?
Hey, Polly,
Yeah,
I either need a second on the motion before we move forward, or else I'm gonna have the motion die.
okay.
Do I have a second?
If there's a second, then we can discuss.
Yeah, basically, once the motion's on the table, I then need a second before we move further, else we can,
And a second wouldn't have to vote for the motion. It would just
no.
be, it's mostly just that would move it to discussion and those questions.
Okay, I'll second it.
Okay, thank you.
So, just to kind of address the staff, it's been pretty quick, Polly. Like I didn't have a plan. I didn't have a secret plan in my basement to require masks. It's obviously been something I've been thinking about this whole pandemic, but gauging the staff today, I feel like I can say there was pretty good support that, you know, a temporary measure isn't a bad idea. I didn't have anyone storm off, or I haven't had anyone send me an email saying this is a bad idea. I felt like the staff was very supportive. Jackie, you've got a good gauge on the staff too. I don't know if you have anything to add to that.
Well, I think everyone has their own experiences, and I think what we really have been trying hard to do is listen to the medical people who are seeing the patients below us in some of this. And that's what's scary to all of us, and trying to be able to manage when we've got covering for each other. There's only so long we can do that before we have to close, and that's what's scary. Is losing that contact with it.
I think that's what we stop focusing on. I don't know, I'm trying to say, but yeah, the kids, they get it, they're sick, maybe they're not gonna go to the hospital, whatever, we're trying to protect our staff and our teachers for their health primarily, but also to keep them at work and keep them safe. So that's why I'm willing to put a mask on my kids for a while, to be able to slow that down and protect adults.
Any other discussion?
So, I mean, we've said it before. I mean, my drawback to the mask is that the minute they walk out of this building, they don't do it. I understand Sean's point, any little bit we can do, but at some point you also got to look at, are we wasting our time? I mean, and same thing back to if we take a pause from school, I mean, we've seen this in the past, it doesn't stop our kids mingling. So it's a catch-22 no matter how we look at it. And that's kind of why I'm thinking, just stay the course and see, and you hate to be using students as test subjects basically, but it's see how this is gonna run through us.
Any other discussion? Okay, we're gonna vote then. Is there anyone opposed to the motion? Well, maybe I'll just take a voice vote, because otherwise it's not gonna work. Sandy,
So what is the motion? We're gonna stay the course.
we'll restate the motion. Thank you, Sandy, for asking.
Quinn Wimhoff made a motion to stay the course until there are 10 active cases, then have a special meeting if needed to change. Is that right?
So, and to operate under the current plan, we have currently a board approved plan. And then pending, if we got to what is defined in that plan as a high level of spread.
Meeting to reevaluate.
Okay, I'll agree.
Okay, thank you. Polly,
I,
thank you. Quinn? Thank you. Nay. Motion passes. Thank you very much. Thank you for your work on this, Mr. Keith, and hopefully we won't have to come back to reconsider. Everybody wants that, especially not Friday.
I hope parents and everyone is smart enough that once kids are sick or exposed, they quarantine them themselves.
I will,
Something in one hand and something in the other.
I'll say publicly to the board, because we're still in our meeting, I greatly appreciate, because there are a lot of videos of people owning the board or whatever you want to say, that I deeply appreciate the meaningful and serious discussion that you guys gave this and respect the decision. Thank you. The next
well,
one,
and I think it's important to note, like, if you want to put your kid in a mask, you could put your, I mean, there's nothing saying that
I'm not saying that we can't.
you can't. So, I mean, like Sandy, you said somebody called and wanted, I mean, are those people can wear a mask
you bet.
to school.
You bet.
So,
I mean,
I don't know, just a comment.
we've all, I mean, I know your conversations at home with your spouses, with the rest of your family, with people in the workplace. We've all talked to people about this. And so we've all, I think somebody mentioned, we've all got like a different I mean, Janice talked about that earlier today, but we've all got this different blend of experiences and background we're trying to bring to this. And we're trying to follow the recommendations of the doctors and CDC, or not CDC, but our local health district as well. And we did that, trying to put this plan together. We're not abandoning our plans. You know, hopefully we won't have to make any soon adjustments, but we may. We're moving on to discussion items. What is discussion items?
None.
None.
I should have taken my cue for it.
Okay, thank you. We're gonna have the K-12 principal report.
Okay, I have some pictures of, you can see them on your screen as well. First day of school, we were missing half of our high school, a third of the group, but we did a lot of things, we did a lot of things outside as we could. ASB, we have an awesome slate of officers, and they worked really hard to make this day fun. We spent time on what's called cocktail now, and we spent a lot of time at the water polo, and we were able to obtain some inflatable obstacle courses, and we kept them for an extra day for the next day for the K6 students to enjoy as well. So I think the kids really enjoy being together and, you know, trying to do as much as they could outside. Open house, the city library was gracious enough to include us in their grant. After we had our open house here, it kind of kept people from grouping up too much, which was really good for the situation. And they had the hamburger feed at the city park with booths and things on literature, summer reading drawings. We even had entertainment. Got a little chilly, so people didn't stay really long, but it was really nice to be able to move and include more of the community. Reading assessments in K3 are completed. The results are used to help place students in Title I in grades K through 3. We're still in the process of that because it also includes classroom assessments for the teacher. We have a core project. We've been doing core for about 3 years now. Core project was something we did for social emotional learning for 7 and 12. But we're going to move the core project to 6 to 8, focus on just, it's a 3-year cycle and just focus on the junior high. We have a new program written by Dr. Tim Elmore, who's written a book, several books, but one was Generation Z, the unfiltered generation. If you have grandchildren or your own children or students you work with, it would be a great book to read because you will understand things about this generation that is so different than any other. And so this whole Habitudes program is 13 lessons to teach things about ethical responsibility, stress management, really some important things that our kids need to focus on. And they're just once a month kind of lessons. We don't spend a ton of time, but we'll be using it to integrate it into our curriculum. Speech, it will begin, we'll do it the same as we've done with present storming. It begins September 22nd. Also have occupational therapy services starting this week. Preschool screening is coming up. First day will be October 5th, pending our situation. We always kind of hang that with, we don't know what we're going to be, but we hope those little guys can come in. And masks for little ones are really hard for those 4-year-olds, for sure. But we're hoping that things will get better. Sports is on, football, volleyball. Homecoming is October 8th, and it will be at Highland this year, as well as our traditional volleyball games. We will not be coordinating with them on a dance. We just don't want to pack kids together that long, that close, and it's just not going to work for us. We will go ahead and do the homecoming as long as we're healthy enough to do so. Cross country, junior and senior high is on full swing. Mr. Katie could probably tell you a lot more on that. I am pretty proud of my grandson running a race with one shoe on, and he finished 4th.
Against the big school.
With one shoe. Lost it early on.
Basically, 100 meters and lost his shoe.
Didn't stop. Didn't even notice that. Junior high basketball girls are beginning games as well as junior high football boys. And as far as clubs and CPEs, we're just getting started on those. We are looking for a girls club advisor, and the CPEs are just starting to talk about what they can do. And they don't really know. Some things are still up in the air of whether they can have to virtually meet, or it's just difficult right now. Elementary ASB elections, we had our primary today. I had like 6 kids who wanted to be treasurer, so we had to run through a primary, and we will be working on our campaigning this week and have our general elections. I'm going to videotape the kids' speeches, though I don't really want to shove all the kids in one room and listen to speeches. So we're going to try to monitor those kinds of things as much as we can. So our schedule's a little different for our 6th grade this year. There has been a lot of research that has been shared with me about kids having recess before they eat. We don't typically have, because we have a morning recess, the kids are pretty hungry. When they come in to eat from 10 to 11, they're in school and then they go in to eat. But our 6th graders, because that puts so many kids in the lunchroom, and this is going to help with it. Another thing to help with our spacing is we have them go outside first when the kids are done eating, the little younger kids are done eating, and then they come in a quarter till and eat right before the junior high comes in. They eat, I think I've noticed that they take a little longer to eat if they're not just trying to wolf it down to the outside recess. So I think it's been better for them, and then they go to class right after that. Junior and senior high school is the meeting we're planning on having a first one this Wednesday. We have a lot to talk about and plan for homecoming, which is homecoming week 4 through 8. It'll be 4 days instead of 5 because we have that one day after the fair. And then fundraisers are beginning. They'll be safe and sane burgers this Friday. And we have been talking to the senior citizens about doing some virtual visits rather than going and putting an older population at risk because I can assume they're all vaccinated besides the people from the area, and I just don't to them. So last year we had some of a pen pal arrangement. This year I'd like to do something a little more virtual. So we'll see what their technological abilities and just their hardware. And hopefully we want to keep that contact with our community because I think it's important. They were really appreciative last year. That's all I have.
Thank you. Any questions or comments? Okay, we're ready for Mr. Peak report.
So just every year in September, I like to give a little bit of enrollment attendance update. I know it's still subject to a little bit of fluctuation, but we're basically holding it where we've been in that 163 students range. Just I already had you guys approve the football and baseball cooperative, and that we're petitioning down the Yellowstone trip. That seems like 2 meetings ago that we talked about that, but it really was a very neat trip, once in a lifetime. And I think there was some truth with COVID that they were safer kind of quarantined as a group as long as one person didn't have it when we started. I appreciate the parents that, I mean, the several parents that paid the test free trip, so it helped. And just a reminder that all school lunches are free for students. If you have people that approach you about that, it's the SSO that you talked about. And we really are paid by the meals served, so it's important. We've done some communicating, because if a kid gets a milk, we have to charge them for it, or just the salad bar, they get charged for that. But if they get the meal, then they can have the milk and the salad bar with it. So it's, I mean, it's just one of those quirks.
To the point of, I can get the meal as I walk by the trash can, dump it, and have my milk and salad.
Quite honestly, that is 100% the truth.
And then we're all paid.
Yep, the federal government is paying for it. So, but it funds our school and the program. Either way, I guess it funds it. If they get just the milk or the salad, they're paying for it out of their own pocket. It is a la carte. The 4 routes seem to be working well. We're still working on a little bit of, not helping Tim not be too frustrated. Change is hard, and kind of that pickup, and we're still trying to figure out what's the best way to communicate with parents who are picking up their kids too. But overall, I think safety has improved with those kids accessing that from that sidewalk going down, as opposed to up front and people running through to get to the cars. So we've created some of that separation. The mornings are pretty easy. It's the loading in the afternoon when all 4 buses are there at the same, because in the morning the buses kind of roll in individually. We've got a few kids that are adjusting. It's a pretty short route. Everything starts after 7 and gets you here in time. So our buses are actually getting here a little bit later than last year at this point. Yeah, but we've had a few things with kids kind of dilly-dallying, and Miss Lawson is working hard to get them in there, get lunch or breakfast 8, and sometimes they want to have an extra recess before the school day starts. But she's been doing a good job of that.
9-course breakfast.
I continue, we meet weekly with public health and with other superintendents. I stay in regular contact with them. And then just for the board's information and my schedule, as I'm an IHSA board member now, I'll be gone to IHSA meetings in a couple of weeks. 2 of them, or I guess next week and the week after that. So, obviously available on phone and email, but just out of this. That is, I wanted to mention one other thing, and I forgot it in my report. I made a post on Facebook, but Tim, and later I found out too, Marcy, were honored in our region for their incredible score. It was like 97.9% compliance or whatever with the transportation department within the state department of education. So that was really a teamwork thing that both Tim with his work in the shop and then Marcy on the paperwork end and working together did. And so we were the top scorer for our region, and the State Department of Education also recognized them. So kudos to both Tim and Marcy for their work on that. They do a great job. And we will likely have one more bus driver as a substitute. So we're from 3 to
I think I saw hundreds of those big bus driver needed signs driving around Oregon,
everywhere.
Washington, which is crazy. Any questions or comments for superintendent?
Sean, what are, 'cause I had this question asked you, what are the school's requirements to be a substitute? Not a bus driver, but a teacher.
Heartbeat.
No.
We would prefer a bachelor's degree or associate's degree if it was a world where we could kind of prefer that, but it would be over 21, I think. And
Have the background.
pass a background
So
check.
they do, I'm assuming, so they do got a file.
Yeah, you can get fingerprinted, you pass a background check. So but there's and we have different pays for who's certified or have been certified, like a retired teacher versus a non-certified.
Substitutes do we have on?
It's less.
Maybe 10,
Yeah,
and not all of them can do every day and.
Right,
have to do
There's
something
10 possible phone
farm.
numbers.
Yeah.
And here's what people lined out for tomorrow, you say you put them tomorrow, they can tell.
No.
No?
We're repurposing an aid to not in the ideal situation that we would want. So. And then we'll cover the house.
And then, yeah, and sometimes some of those ICs like the color, they just have to be careful.
Thank you. I've got two things to add on to the superintendent's report. The Region 2 meeting has been moved to all virtual. You probably got an email about it, but I just want to remind you, Wednesday, September 22nd at 6 p.m. And the ISBA annual meeting, unless, number one, the state goes to phase 3 or Boise issues some kind of room capacity mandate, they're still planning to go in person. So I went down to the ISBA executive board meeting this week, and that's all I'll say about that, but I just got that out there. Hope you can all go to the region or attend the region meeting if you'd like to. They're just gonna go over the resolutions. It shouldn't be a long meeting.
You know how many resolutions there are?
There are 9. And they were all passed with the due pass by executive board, so, yeah, they're pretty straightforward. Oh, and I sent you an email about, I was running for ISBA vice president, and I'm still doing that. I have a competition now. Star Olson is his name. He serves on the IHSA board, and that's all I can say about that, since we're in open session. Anyway, entertain a motion to adjourn. Thank you. Anybody opposed? Anybody abstained? Thank you. Have a good night. Thanks for your work. Thanks for your participation.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
And here's the